Shout out to everybody in the building, man. Yeah, man, it's crazy. America has got involved with the Israel-Iranian, situation they got going over there. President Trump just announced it not too long ago. Man, oh man, y'all make sure y'all get those likes up. Most definitely hit that like button. You know what I'm saying? Most definitely subscribe to the channel if you're new, man. What's up, legit? It's crazy, man. We done got involved in the conflict in Israel, man. Yeah, man, you know what I'm saying? Trump say we in there like swimwear, man. Basically said they have hit 3 of Iran's top nuclear sites, guys. Here you go.
Thank you very much. A short time ago, the U.S. military carried out massive precision strikes on the 3 key nuclear facilities in the Iranian regime: Fordow, Natanz, and Esfahan.
What's up, homebody?
Everybody heard those names for years as they built this horribly destructive enterprise. Our objective was the destruction of Iran's nuclear enrichment capacity and a stop to the nuclear threat posed by the world's #1 state sponsor of terror. Tonight, I can report to the world that the strikes were a spectacular military success. Iran's key nuclear enrichment facilities have been completely and totally obliterated. Iran, the bully of the Middle East, must now make peace. If they do not, future attacks will be far greater and a lot easier. For 40 years, Iran has been saying death to America, death to Israel. They have been killing our people, blowing off their arms, blowing off their legs with roadside bombs. That was their specialty. We lost over 1,000 people, and hundreds of thousands throughout the Middle East and around the world have died as a direct result of their hate. In particular, so many were killed by their general, Qasem Soleimani. I decided a long time ago that I would not let this happen. It will not continue. I want to thank and congratulate Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu. We worked as a team like perhaps no team has ever worked before. And we've gone a long way to erasing this horrible threat to Israel. I want to thank the Israeli military for the wonderful job they've done. And most importantly, I want to congratulate the great American patriots who flew those magnificent machines tonight, and all of the United States military on an operation the likes of which the world has not seen in many, many decades. Hopefully, we will no longer need their services in this capacity. I hope that's so. I also want to congratulate the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Dan Kane, spectacular general, and all of the brilliant military minds involved in this attack. With all of that being said, this cannot continue. There will be either peace or there will be tragedy for Iran far greater than we have witnessed over the last 8 days. Remember, there are many targets left. Tonight's was the most difficult of them all, by far, and perhaps the most lethal. But if peace does not come quickly, we will go after those other targets with precision, speed, and skill. Most of them can be taken out in a matter of minutes. There's no military in the world that could have done what we did tonight, not even close. There has never been a military that could do what took place just a little while ago. Tomorrow, General Kane, Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth will have a press conference at 8 a.m. at the Pentagon. And I want to just thank everybody, and in particular, God. I want to just say, we love you, God, and we love our great military. Protect them. God bless the Middle East. God bless Israel, and God bless America. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Whoa, guys. Yeah, like a gangster. Like a mafia boss. I'm just saying, man. Yeah, man, he most definitely did it, guys. One more time. You know what I'm saying? We're going to run it back one more time. Trump just announced that we most definitely we disabled Iran's nuclear technology, guys. He dropped three sites on them, you know what I'm saying? He dropped them on 3 sites. Basically, they said they was gonna retaliate if he got involved, and he most definitely got involved, y'all. Yeah, but this is the speech he gave one more time.
Thank you very much. A short time ago, the U.S. military carried out massive precision strikes on the three key nuclear facilities in the Iranian regime: Fordow, Natanz, and Esfahan. Everybody heard those names for years as they built this horribly destructive enterprise. Our objective was the destruction of Iran's nuclear enrichment capacity and a stop to the nuclear threat posed by the world's #1 state sponsor of terror. Tonight, I can report to the world that the strikes were a spectacular military success. Iran's key nuclear enrichment facilities have been completely and totally obliterated. Iran, the bully of the Middle East, must now make peace. If they do not, future attacks will be far greater and a lot easier. For 40 years, Iran has been saying death to America, death to Israel. They have been killing our people, blowing off their arms, blowing off their legs with roadside bombs. That was their specialty. We lost over 1,000 people, and hundreds of thousands throughout the Middle East and around the world have died as a direct result of their hate. In particular, so many were killed by their general, Qasem Soleimani. I decided a long time ago that I would not let this happen. It will not continue. I want to thank and congratulate Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu. We worked as a team like perhaps no team has ever worked before. And we've gone a long way to erasing this horrible threat to Israel. I want to thank the Israeli military for the wonderful job they've done. And most importantly, I want to congratulate the great American patriots who flew those magnificent machines tonight, and all of the United States military on an operation the likes of which the world has not seen in many, many decades. Hopefully, we will no longer need their services in this capacity. I hope that's so. I also want to congratulate the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Dan Raisin-Kane, spectacular general, and all of the brilliant military minds involved in this attack. With all of that being said, this cannot continue. There will be either peace or there will be tragedy for Iran far greater than we have witnessed over the last 8 days. Remember, there are many targets left. Tonight's was the most difficult of them all, by far, and perhaps the most lethal. But if peace does not come quickly, we will go after those other targets with precision, speed, and skill. Most of them can be taken out in a matter of minutes. There's no military in the world that could have done what we did tonight, not even close. There has never been a military that could do what took place just a little while ago. Tomorrow, General Kane, Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth will have a press conference at 8 a.m. at the Pentagon. And I want to just thank everybody, and in particular, God. I want to just say, we love you, God, and we love our great military. Protect them. God bless the Middle East. God bless Israel, and God bless America. Thank you very much. Thank you.
So yeah, Trump decided to do it. Are y'all surprised? Y'all remember, they most definitely tried to take Trump out, which in a plan that was spoiled. You know what I'm saying? They didn't get to do it because the Secret Service got to him first. Man, this is crazy, y'all. He decided to do it. He hit 3 of Iran's nuclear sites, guys, today. He just did it a while ago. He just came and gave his press conference and basically announced, that America most definitely got involved. They said, hey, man, if America gets involved, then they were going to retaliate against us, guys. So now that Trump has took action, man, people are saying this could be the beginning of WW3, man. What y'all think about that? You know what I'm saying? What y'all think about that? I don't know what to think. I'm like, oh my goodness, man. Oh my goodness. Wow. This is what they said. Check this out. This is what they said. This is Iran basically speaking on what would happen if America got involved.
representative of Israel.
Madam President, I would like to thank the Secretary General, USG De Carlo, and Director General Grossi for your remarks. Madam President, before I begin my remarks, I must address the representative of the Islamic regime in Iran. Mr. Iravani, how dare you write 5 letters in the last week, come before this council, demand a session, and ask the international community for sympathy.
Oh my goodness, guys, what y'all think
How
gonna
dare
happen,
you
man?
ask the international community to protect you from the consequences of your own genocidal agenda? Have you no shame? For years, your supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, has publicly and repeatedly called for the destruction of Israel.
That's the dude over Iran right here. Man, Nurse P, he done, man, they saying he could have jumped off WW3. Trump has went over there, he has sent military forces over there to basically disable, you know, AKA drop them things on 3 of Iran's top nuclear sites, guys. He did it today. You know, America has got involved in the Iran Israel situation, man.
And the United States. In May 2024, he declared that, I quote, "The divine promise to eliminate the Zionist entity will be fulfilled." In May 2025, he said, and I quote, "The Zionist regime that is a lethal, dangerous, cancerous tumor should certainly be eradicated, and it will be." These statements are your regime's policies. Your government has attempted the assassination of Prime Minister Netanyahu. It attempted the assassination of President Trump. Your operatives have plotted to attack Jewish communities and kill Israeli civilians across the world.
This is the dude from Israel that's speaking right now.
Now,
Israel.
with innocent blood still dripping from
Double
your
tap
hands,
that screen, guys. Get the likes up.
you come here asking for sympathy. You demand protection from this council while plotting the extermination of my people. It's enough. Enough with the performances. Enough with the theater. How can this council allow the representative of a regime that funds,
What's up,
arms,
only 1, 2, 3?
and orchestrates terror across the world to come here and play victim? It's like a wolf complaining when the shepherd fights back to protect his flock. So innocent. Mr. Iravani, please clarify to us. Do you support the destruction of Israel?
All right, so this is the top person in Iran right here. This is a conference that they held where they said that if America gets involved in the Iran-Israel situation and tries to basically be in the middle of it, they would also retaliate. Basically, they would attack us.
A UN member state? Do you support the assassination of our elected leaders? If you do not say so, we are all here, waiting. This council,
man, he got his top. That dude got Iran got their poker face on. My goodness.
You are not a victim. You are not even a diplomat. You are a wolf pretending to be a diplomat. And we are done.
Shout out to Nurse P for being a member for 9 months. She says Agent Owen always getting us involved in some ish. Real talk, man. Well, it's on now.
Pretending otherwise. Madam President, on Wednesday night, Iran launched a ballistic missile directly at a hospital And by the way, I listened to your word. You mentioned that we attacked hospitals. I ask you to provide a list of the hospitals that Israel attacked in Iran. We know what we are doing.
I asked y'all, could this be the beginning of WW3 with what Trump just did, guys?
If we attacked hospitals, show us the locations, show us the names and the list. Iran launched a ballistic missile directly at the hospital, Soroka Medical Center in Beersheba, the largest hospital in
Shout out
southern
to
Israel.
Ben Walker for that
It was struck
gift.
by a precision-guided missile
Josh, he did
fired
it,
by the
dog.
Islamic Republic of Iran.
Trump went over there and dropped them things on 3 of Iran's top nuclear plants, guys. They vowed that if we got involved, that they would most definitely retaliate against the United States, man. Could this be the beginning of WW3? I'm just saying. You know, Iran can't stand Trump, and Trump can't stand Iran. Now, they have been waiting. They was asking the other day whether Trump was going to do it or not. He told them, I can't tell you. You know, just basically wait and see. Well, today, he most definitely did it, guys. We are involved.
This hospital serves over 1 million people. Jews, Muslims, Christians, Druze, Bedouin. It is a vital provider of emergency and trauma care. Iran hit it in purpose. There was no military bases around. No mistakes. Leaving those million people with severely reduced access to medical service. This was not a misfire. This was not a mistake. Iran has proven its ability to strike strategic targets with accuracy. This was a deliberate act. It is a blatant violation of international law, a war crime, and a calculated attempt to murder the most vulnerable. Let this council understand.
David says, dude, we had no choice. Yes, we did. He could have just said we ain't getting in it, but he decided to get off in it. I'm just saying, man, do you think this will be the beginning of WW3 with what Trump just did? He dropped them things on 3 of Iran's top nuclear sites, guys.
But that missile really signified that no one is safe. That if Iran will target a hospital with a ballistic missile, it will target anyone, anywhere, with anything they have. Today it was Beersheba. Tomorrow it could be Brussels. Soon it could be Boston.
What's up, Shan 215?
Iran is rapidly expanding its ballistic missile arsenal. Today its longest range missiles can travel over 2,000 kilometers. That already puts Eastern Europe in range.
Say this ain't good.
But Iran is not stopping there. Iran is developing missiles with a range of over 4,000 kilometers. That would place every European capital, London, Paris, Berlin, Rome, within striking distance. And when that milestone reach, what comes next? New York, Washington, the U.S. entire East Coast. Before Israel took action,
listen to what he said.
What comes next? New York.
Hold on, listen to what he said.
Capital, London, Paris, Berlin, Rome, within striking distance. And when that milestone reach, what comes next? New York, Washington, the U.S. entire East Coast.
He's saying they got things that are capable. Iran has things capable of making it all the way to the United States. So now once they figure out that they can make it to London, what comes next? Washington, you know what I'm saying? New York, you know, all of these places that some of y'all live, man. Yeah, this is very real and very dangerous.
Before Israel took action, that reality was approaching faster than you could imagine.
Danny Danon is the ambassador to the United Nations from Israel. We see him speak at a number of these Security Council meetings. We heard from his Iranian counterpart as well. We'll play some of those remarks out later on in the evening. In the meantime, a live look at Tel Aviv as well as Jerusalem. We keep an eye on these cameras just in case on the desk raise around the democracy.
Man, this crazy, y'all. Hold up. get us where we need to be.
The researchers at the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies, the FDD uncovered what they say appears to be a psychological operation targeting the Israeli public. Max Lesser is a senior analyst on emerging threats at the FDD. He's here. Max, how did this get uncovered?
So my team actually went on Twitter and was searching for Hebrew phrases that looked threatening. We knew that Iranian threat actors were trying to intimidate Israelis on Twitter using Hebrew language posts. And so we just went in, we dived in, and we looked for some of these messages ourselves. We started uncovering a vast network of different accounts that seemed suspicious. They were often created in mid-June and first posted around June 16th or June 17th. And they were using very unique and often identical hashtag combinations. And when we looked at these accounts,
you just now making it, guys, Trump has dropped
which was an Iranian
things on Iran, guys.
To a Telegram account,
what's up,
which served to orchestrate this large network and essentially coordinate these various fake Israeli accounts, or these fake accounts impersonating Israelis, and have them spread these messages, as you mentioned, Austin, that are meant to demoralize and stoke fear among the Israeli public.
Is 2025, is this normal in 2025, cyber warfare? Is this kind of one of the new battlefields of any big conflict at this point?
Yeah, that's a great question, Austin. And I want to emphasize there are aspects of warfare that are physical or kinetic, and there are aspects of warfare that are psychological or cognitive. And this is something which is ancient. Information warfare is ancient. You see examples of military deception and efforts to stoke fear going back thousands of years. But what we see is that the internet has radically changed the dynamic of information warfare. And yes, nowadays, what we see in this operation is it seems we're still determining who exactly is the actor behind this. Is this an Iranian government effort, or is it just an independent?
Make sure y'all clicking those 3 dots and hitting that thumbs up, man. This is crazy, man. Trump done dropped them things on Iran.
Effort by a pro-regime actor, and the information we've seen so far suggests that it's the second, that this is likely just a pro-regime independent actor who is corralling different pro-regime members of the Iranian public.
Yeah, I played it at the beginning, Gigi.
As you mentioned, Austin, instructing them on how to use ChatGPT to translate Persian phrases into Hebrew.
I don't really care about the
calling for Iranians to rise up.
Hold on, I got another one. Let's go over here. Hold up. Let's go over here.
Special report. Here's Jose Diaz-Balart.
Let's go right here.
Good evening. We are coming on the air with breaking news from the White House. President Trump posting on his Truth social media platform just moments ago. The U.S. has completed a, quote, very successful attack on 3 nuclear sites inside Iran. The president saying that all U.S. planes are now outside of Iranian airspace. Let's go directly to what the president has just posted on his social media site.
Yeah, it's official, guys.
Our very successful attack on the 3 nuclear sites in Iran, including Fordo, Natanz, and Escalation. All planes are now outside of Iran airspace. A full payload of bombs was dropped on the primary site, Fordo. All planes are safely on their way home. The president continues to state, congratulations to our great American warriors. There is not another military in the world that could have done this. In caps, now is the time for peace. Thank you for your attention.
Could this be the beginning of WW3, guys?
This all comes after a week of back and forth strikes between Israel and Iran after Israel hit key targets related to Iran's nuclear program. Tonight's news has major implications for American foreign policy, with the U.S. now directly involved with the conflict between Israel and Iran. Let's go right to Vaughn Hilliard. He is at the White House this evening. Vaughn, what else have we learned?
The president just returned from his New Jersey golf course just about 2 hours ago. He came here back to the White House. A Marine has been standing outside of the West Wing as he met with his national security team. And right as this social media post was put out by the president, I saw the Secretary of State Marco Rubio on his phone outside of the West Wing doors. The president just yesterday, when I was with him on the tarmac as he headed to New Jersey, he had put out this idea that Iran had 2 weeks to potentially negotiate a nuclear agreement with the United States and end the Israeli airstrikes into Iran territory. Now, the president himself had suggested that they would have 2 weeks max, but notably did not rule out a more immediate strike. Now, Israeli Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu...
I most definitely heard him say that, Gigi. Yeah, he most definitely said it's going to get worse. There are other targets that he can hit, but for right now, he has hit 3 of Iran's top nuclear spots. And man, oh man, they vowed revenge if we got involved. Do y'all think they will retaliate?
Had asserted that Israel had the capacities and the ability to take out the nuclear facilities. And when I asked the president very specifically about the Israeli prime minister's claim, he pushed back and undercut that assessment, saying that the U.S. was the only one that had the bombing capabilities to strike particularly the Fordo nuclear site, which there are activities half a mile underneath the ground. It is not clear at this point in time whether B-2 bombers were used in this instance to take out the Fordo nuclear site. So I don't want to jump ahead of what we know here at this time. But for the president, this is a striking moment. Attacking a Middle East country.
We need 20 more likes, guys. Double tap that screen and click those 3 dots
to negotiate with. But clearly the president making the decision to go forward with these strikes despite Iranian threats that they would respond in kind by attacking U.S. military installations. There are a lot of outstanding questions here about where Iran goes from this moment, but the United States standing in solidarity with Israel, who 1 week ago began that attack with their initial airstrikes into Iran. There are a lot of outstanding questions, Jose, here at this hour, but the U.S. taking a significant step. And I will note that I had the chance to ask the president yesterday very specifically how this moment was different than the decision of a previous Republican administration more than 20 years ago to strike over questionable intelligence about weapons of mass destruction. And he said that he knew that they were building a nuclear weapon. That is in contrast to the assessment of his own director of national intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, who suggested that the U.S. intel community did not have that same intelligence. Jose?
And Vaughn, during that conversation that you had with the president, he essentially said that his director of national security was wrong in her assessment that Iran had not yet gotten to the point where they could either build or complete building a nuclear weapon.
That's right. We know that, especially over the last months, that Iran has enriched high levels of uranium that could go into developing a nuclear weapon. But there's a distinction. Again, just yesterday, in an interview with our Andrea Mitchell, the Iranian foreign minister exclusively told her that they are using uranium for peaceful purposes. Now, the question here that you just alluded to was Tulsi Gabbard. Again, Donald Trump, the president's handpicked director of national intelligence, standing by their assessment that they have no intel that an actual nuclear weapon was being developed. Now, there are questions of whether that would take weeks, months, potentially a year to actually build that weapon. But the Iranian foreign minister making it clear to our colleague Andrea Mitchell that they had no intent to build a weapon. Of course, this is a long-standing back and forth here between the United States and Iran. It was 10 years ago that under the Obama administration, an initial nuclear agreement was struck between several European countries and the United States. It would allow inspectors into several of these facilities, including the Fordo nuclear site that we were just discussing that exists a half a mile underneath the ground here. But back in 2018, the Trump administration decided to pull out of that. There were sunset provisions. They said that they did not address proxies of Iran, and that they felt that issuing sanctions would be more serious means. So there's a lot of questions here tonight for the president and this White House to answer.
Von Hillard at the White House, of course, keep on this, stay monitoring this situation. That concludes this NBC News special report. We'll have more breaking coverage right now on our streaming network, NBC News Now, and online.
This is crazy, guys. Hold on, let's go.
He says that the United States bombed these 3 nuclear sites in Iran, including a full payload of bombs dropped on the primary site. That would, Courtney, imply, at least for all practical purposes, that in order to successfully bomb that site, the United States would have used those buster bombs.
Continue to double tap that screen, guys. Get the lights up. Trump just got involved in the Israel-Iran
we don't have a lot of detail at this point. But here's a couple things I would take away from the president's Truth Social. Number one, he said we have completed are very successful. That to me would indicate that this was sort of the bombers went in, or the potentially other aircraft, most likely other aircraft as well, went in here, they conducted this bombing run, and they got out. They've cleared Iranian airspace. That's generally the point at which military officials or the White House, I guess, would release any kind of information once they are clear of that potentially dangerous airspace over Iran. What we don't know is exactly what was used here. So if we look at some of the factors that we've seen today, we know
is this a good thing or a bad thing, y'all? Y'all let me know in the comments, man. You know, previously Iran vowed to retaliate if America got involved in this situation, and we just most definitely did today.
Some B-2 bombers, a handful of them took off from Whiteman Air Force Base over Missouri. It was about 2 o'clock in the morning Eastern time. That is enough time for them to get to Iran. They have the ability, Jose, to fly extremely long distances. So we're talking like 3-day missions, refueling in the air, never actually touching the ground.
Say this is bad.
Again,
Zach
we don't have
says this is a
confirmation
great
that was
thing.
what was used here, but we have been talking all week about how difficult it would be to actually bomb Fordo. The actual facility sits somewhere in the neighborhood of about 300 feet below the surface of the earth, and it's underneath.
Well, according to Israel, Iran is very powerful. He says that they have missiles that can hit London, you know, and after they accomplish that feat, then this is the next target is America.
Reinforced concrete. Now, the U.S. has these bunker busters you mentioned. They're technically called a massive ordnance penetrator. And what they are, these huge, really heavy bombs. They're only about 5,000 or 6,000 pounds of total explosives, but they're about 30,000 pounds in total payload, meaning that the majority of that weight is coming from these really heavy, strong, basically outer casings that have the ability to penetrate deep into the earth about 200 feet down before detonating.
Those lights up, double tap
really
that screen,
wanted to take out Fordo, it would take a number of these mops or these bunker
just got involved in the Israel-Iran situation,
that concrete until they're able to fully break through it. Again, we don't know that that was used, but it makes the most sense. And as we've been saying, it's one of the capabilities that Israel simply does not have. They don't have bombs of this size, and they don't have the aircraft, the B-2, that are able to actually deploy them. One thing I was surprised about this was that the U.S. hit 3 different sites, as we heard from the president here tonight, not just at Fordo that we've been talking about. They also hit Natanz. Israel has already been striking Natanz over the last week plus now, and they also hit Esfahan. Now, the next big question is, well, several questions. One, is the U.S. going to continue? Is this a one and done?
Oh, my goodness, y'all.
Statement, he said completed. You know, we'll take that for now as to be this mission right now is completed for the United States. The next question, will Iran respond and how? The biggest concern all along is is that Iran, or more likely Iranian proxies, will go after U.S. installations and assets in the region. There's a lot of them right within very close striking distance of Iran. But one thing that the U.S. has going for them, and this is number one, they've started getting some Americans out of there. They started moving some assets around to get them out of harm's way.
Shrek says air raid sirens are going off right now.
Israel has really taken out a lot of Iran's conventional capabilities as well, not just going after their nuclear sites. So we're talking about their radars, their launchers, and even some of their ballistic.
I ask that if you can hear the sound of my voice, that you double tap that screen or click those three dots, hit that thumbs up, man. Support the channel by hitting the like button. That's how you do it. Shout out to everybody in the building. I appreciate each and every one of y'all. Most definitely, please take time to hit that like button.
Missiles. The third big concern here is when you're hitting a nuclear site, or three of them, is there potential for radioactive material to spill into the ground, to spill into the atmosphere? Jose? I am far from an expert on nuclear material and radioactive material, but I have been reaching out to people who are experts on this. They say that the risk of that at Fordo is expected to be relatively low. James Acton, who's an expert on these sorts of issues, says that the material there is very low in radioactivity anyway at Fordo. And so the risk of it spilling into the atmosphere is low. The same with Natanz. We also heard from the IAEA this week, after those first strikes on Natanz, they said there is very little indication of anything getting out. The big concern here is if they were to hit Bushehr. That's at one of the facilities where there could be some sort of a fallout of radioactive material.
And these are all questions that are up in the air. And Courtney, once again, I can't thank you enough for the knowledge that you bring to us. But the fact that the president says that this main site was successfully hit, it could only be successfully destroyed by those ordinances that you were referring to. And in a way, they're not only bombs, they're actually almost like drill tips that are able to penetrate deep in the ground and then at a predetermined distance or depth detonate.
Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you're new, guys. Continue to get those likes up. Double tap that screen.
Very high. I think
that everything they know on what's going on right now.
Again, we don't know, but the sorts of planning that was going into this that we've been hearing, the sorts of ideas that have been out there. Remember, this is not like, 10 days ago, the United States and Israel started talking about the potential for one day going after Iran's nuclear program and what it would look like. These are the kinds of plans that have been there for years and years, and they just update them and they dust them off as things develop. The plans I have heard about have generally included more than just using these massive ordnance penetrators. They've included others as well. The big question is, as the sun starts to come up over Iran in an hour or two, whenever it is will the U.S. or Israel or anyone be able to get any kind of a ground assessment of exactly what happened on the ground, if they were able to, with these bombs, really obliterate everything on the ground and really destroy the facility? Or is there some way that with these bombs that they drop, they can almost make it collapse in on itself, for all intents and purposes, entomb itself underground so that it still would be rendered unusable?
Courtney Kuby, thank you so very much. I want to bring in our chief foreign correspondent, Richard.
Now, Trump said he don't think that China and Russia will get involved because he is good with both countries. I don't know, though, man. You know what I'm saying? People are saying that this could be the beginning of WW3, man. What y'all think, man? I'm like, man, I don't know what to think right now. Some say it's a good thing. Some say it's a bad thing.
Well, he is in Tel Aviv at this hour. Richard Courtney was talking about when the sun comes up in that part of the world. You are at that part of the world. What's your reaction to this, and what have you been hearing at this late hour?
So the reaction is the United States is now at war again, actively in the Middle East, and is entering a war of regime change. That is what Israel's goal is here. It has been decapitating the leadership of Iran. It has been attacking the top military commanders. It has been prepping the ground for this kind of attack for the last week. Now we will see when the light comes up. There will be every satellite you can imagine in the world over Iran trying to make assessments. did the United States just in the last few moments carry out a knockout blow against Iran's nuclear program? President Trump had been calling on Iran to negotiate. The Iranians had said they wanted to negotiate, but they wanted to retain aspects of their nuclear program to use for civilian use, that they wanted to maintain the ability to enrich uranium, potentially to make a bomb. They said they never would, and it sounds like now President Trump and Israel have decided to leave them with nothing to negotiate over. That they can come to negotiations, but they will not have that card in their hand if that is what the assessment is. And that is why Israel has wanted the United States to intervene in this, to deliver that final knockout blow of its program. Now, we will see if there will be a regional reaction. Jose, it seems unlikely that any major states in the region are going to intervene on Iran's behalf. It doesn't have those kind of allies, but it does have some militia groups, but not nearly, it is not nearly as powerful, Iran today as it was a year ago or after October 7th.
And Richard, one of the reasons...
Yes, guys, we are most definitely outfitted, man. I don't know how it's going to go. Y'all know that Iran basically vowed to retaliate if America got involved, y'all. I don't know how to feel about it. I don't know if it's a good or a bad thing that we got outfitted. Man, I'm just like, man, I don't know what to think. You know, with all this nuclear talk, man. Oh, my God, y'all. Y'all make sure y'all double tap that screen. Get those likes up. Most definitely subscribe to the channel if you're new. This is everything that we hearing and what we know about what's going on with Trump disabling 3 of Iran's top nuclear sites.
That it is not as powerful as it may have been before October the 7th is precisely the work that Israel has been carrying out in places like Lebanon and other parts of the Middle East to severely destroy Hezbollah's leadership and even the top infrastructure. Hamas has been so devastated by the war in Gaza. What are the possible allies, or, and I'm thinking of the Houthis, what are the possible repercussions to this attack tonight?
So he just asked $1 million question. What could be the repercussions of what Trump just did? Let's see what he say.
You mentioned Iran used to be much more powerful. It had a network of allies. But in some ways, this attack that we're seeing now with Israel and the United States, both fighting against Iran, both acting militarily, is revenge for October 7th. Because although there's been no evidence that Iran was involved in organizing that attack that killed so many here in Israel and led Israel to launch a war in Gaza that is still ongoing and has devastated Gaza, Iran supported Hamas for many years. Hamas was one of its proxies that it sent weapons to and it defended. Now, after that attack, Israel went after Hamas, went after Hezbollah group in Lebanon. Both of these were seen as potential threats. As Courtney was saying, this attack is not something that Israel just woke up and started thinking about today. This is something that Prime Minister Netanyahu has talked about doing for many years, has been encouraging the United States to do for many years. It appears that it has now just happened. And Iran is not in the same position to respond as it did before. It does not have Hamas in the same way. It's still there, but much diminished. Hezbollah is not really a threat. And Iran itself is not as powerful as it used to be because, at least for the last week, it has been systematically attacked. The militias to watch are primarily at this stage the Houthis and different militias in Iraq, where they still have a considerable amount of strength and a considerable amount of influence in society. I think that's why we've also seen recent steps to increase security and take personnel.
All right, so it's been confirmed, y'all. We use B-2 bombers in order to take out these 3 top sites in Iran, guys.
Out of the embassy and diplomatic facilities in Iraq.
And so, Richard, just to kind of recap the significance, importance, grave importance of what happened just a little while ago for us here at this side of the world. It seems things are so distant to many of us, but what's happening very close to where you are is having a direct impact on us here. Now, Israel has been involved in a very hot war with Iran for a week now. That back and forth has slowed down just tonight?
To a degree, it has. Now, we don't know what is going to come now in the immediate aftermath of this attack, but the U.S. has also been putting so much firepower in the region. I think the message has gotten very clear to Iran that if it does respond against American bases or it responds in a new way against Israel, in a more forceful way, now with extra American firepower in the region and an apparent willingness by President Trump to use it, then the Iranians certainly will have to think twice and three times and four times about how they respond. So we might see an immediate response.
Trump says any immediate retaliation against the U.S. will be met with great force, guys. That he just put out that statement. You know what I'm saying? That if they even attempt to try to come back at us, you know, it's going to be very bad, in his words.
It will be very difficult for Iran to sit back and do nothing. But a lot of steel have been put around Iran. A lot of ships, a lot of planes. They have military bases. They are very much in the crosshairs and have already been under attack for the last week straight against the leadership. Some reporting that the supreme leader already considering a succession plan, looking at other leaders around him who could potentially replace him should he be assassinated. There's been open talk here in Israel calling for his assassination, and not just from people on the street, including the defense minister said he's been eliminated. So there is a
they over there trying to, you know, they plotting to take out Trump, guys. He says that over there where he's at, where he's basically in Iran right now, they have been having talks about taking out President Trump, guys, already.
Still leadership crisis in Iran right now, and the U.S. just attacked potentially with these enormous bunker busters that only the U.S. possesses. It is a difficult moment for Iran. And will the U.S. now be entering into a regional war? The U.S. is certainly entering into a war with Iran, a war that seems aimed at changing the regime. And that whenever you change a regime in the Middle East, it has a knock-on effect. You can't take out one piece of the puzzle and not expect the entire map, the entire puzzle to shift.
Richard, stay with me. I want to go back to the White House. Vaughn Hilliard. Vaughn, we have some information that the president is going to be having some statement in short order.
Right. The president, in a social media post, a follow-up to the initial one announcing the airstrikes on these 3 nuclear facilities, is announcing that at 10 p.m. Eastern time, that is about an hour and a half from now, that he will deliver remarks to the country. In that post, making it clear that this was historic and that the troops have been removed from Iran. There are the questions, of course, as you, Courtney, and Richard were just discussing, about what the response is from Iran from here. Of course, when you're looking at the decision of this president yesterday, I was on the tarmac as he headed to his New Jersey golf club, and I asked him the very specific question when the Iranian foreign minister just yesterday afternoon in an exclusive interview with our Andrea Mitchell said that the best way to move forward with potential nuclear negotiations between Iran and the United States was for the president to call up Israeli Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu and request that Israeli airstrikes come to a halt. I asked the president if he would make that request, and he made it clear that that would, quote, be very hard to do, especially when Israel is winning. And so that was a foreshadowing, you could suggest, that 24 hours later, he returned here to the White House, was in the West Wing for about an hour's time before this social media post went out here. So, of course, we will expect to hear from the president about the decision and the calculus to go forward with this. As we were discussing, Jose, his own intelligence community, Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard, had suggested that there was no U.S. intel that Iran was was taking steps to building a nuclear weapon. Of course, in the past months, they have increased their highly enriched uranium production, which would help them in their capabilities to ultimately construct that nuclear weapon. But when I asked the president very specifically about his own intelligence community pushing back on the suggestion that Iran was actively building an actual nuclear weapon, he said his intelligence community was wrong in that Tulsi Gabbard was wrong. Meaning that clearly intelligence, whether it be from the Israelis or elsewhere, suggested to him that this was cause to ultimately move forward with the strike here on this Saturday evening. There's a lot of questions for this president.
In trouble, guys.
But,
let me know.
About 8 years after he removed the United States from what was an Iran nuclear deal struck by the Obama administration back in 2015. He here on this weekend making the decision to go forward with these airstrikes at these 3 Iranian nuclear facilities.
And I want to bring back Richard Engel, because Richard, when one looks at the history of the Middle East and so much more, what you said, when one piece is gone, other pieces will be affected. And I'm thinking of the long and very difficult relationship that the United States has had, Democrat and Republican administrations both, with the Ayatollah regime that has been in power in Iran since 1979. These 3 places that were bombed tonight, what do we know about them?
So these are highly secretive military sites. These are the core of their enrichment capacity. So these would be where highly enriched uranium would be held, or more highly enriched uranium.
The government got us.
The Iranian nuclear program is based on the enrichment of uranium. You take uranium and you spin it in centrifuges and you make it more and more pure, more and more radioactive.
I don't know what. I don't know how to feel, y'all. I don't know how to feel. I'm like, good God Almighty, man.
Deep underground is where some of this spinning happens, where the centrifuges literally spin.
Continue to double tap that screen and get those likes up, guys. We got 1,000 people in the building, only got 238 likes. Double tap that screen and click those 3 dots, hit that thumbs up, subscribe to the channel if you're new.
To 3% or 4%, something that is not considered useful to making any kind of nuclear weapon, and use it to provide, use it to power a civilian nuclear program, or use it for medical purposes. And this is what the Iranians insisted. They wanted to maintain this capacity. I was in Iran recently, and officials told me that that was a red line, to keep the ability to enrich uranium. But they said they would get rid of the more highly enriched uranium, the uranium kept at a 60% level or higher, that it could go under some other country's control. That was what they thought was at the heart of the negotiations. How was this process going to work? Would they be allowed to keep a baseline of enrichment, work out an arrangement where another country or another entity was holding the more highly enriched uranium for them?
We're 40 likes away from 300, guys. Continue to double tap that screen or click those 3 dots, hit that thumbs up, subscribe to the channel if you're new. This is everything we hear about what's going on with Iran and Israel and America, guys.
The rest of the puzzle is going to shift. I was, of course, talking about Iraq. 2002, 2003, we were in a very similar situation where the United States launched a war of choice based on intelligence about weapons of mass destruction that was disputed. You had an intelligence agency, the CIA at the time, that was accused later on of wanting to accommodate and please the president. You had the U.S. at a peak of its power, felt unchallenged and in an ability to impact change all across the region. There was talk about redrawing the map of the Middle East. And the U.S. was initially very successful.
All right, we're going to pause here, man, because there are plenty channels reporting on this situation. Hold up. Let's switch stations. Continue to get those likes up. Double tap that screen. Most definitely subscribe to the channel if you're new. We ain't going nowhere, man. I'm just switching stations because there are plenty of people talking about what's going on. Let's go. More live
once again against any kind of retaliation.
Yeah, echoing what he said in his speech to the nation, saying any retaliation by Iran against the United States will be met with a force far greater than what was witnessed tonight. Very similar to what he told the nation, echoing, pointing to the fact that this is a moment of tremendous uncertainty. Will what the United States did tonight, the most consequential decision Donald Trump has ever made, will it lead to a series of countermeasures by the Iranian regime and its proxies and its allies in the region, attacks on the United States, or will it lead to regime change in Iran? Will it lead ultimately to the collapse of the revolutionary government that has led Iran as an adversary, a fierce adversary of the United States for some 46 years. So, David, what he's signaling is if it happens, if the first scenario happens and Iran strikes out at the United States in retaliation, something that Iran has vowed to do, that Donald Trump is prepared to escalate.
They said they're going to retaliate, guys. Double tap that screen, get the lights up.
Promises of ending forever wars. Under one scenario, this is a beginning, not an end, to our conflict with Iran.
I hear you,
certainly has reshaped the Middle East and what it looks like, in the weeks and months from now. Obviously, we cannot say at this point, though, a significant move tonight on the part of the U.S. military at the instruction of the president to strike 3 major nuclear facilities inside Iran. And again, of course, Fordo is the one many of our viewers are familiar with, the most reporting on it because it's deep underground. John, stick with us. Again, John speaking to President Trump before he addressed the nation. The president expressing to John that he was very pleased with what he saw played out and said it was tremendous success. And then addressing the nation 10 p.m. Eastern, speaking of these 3 facilities. I do want to bring in Martha Raddatz back with us this half hour. And Martha, the question going into tonight and this operation, he said there was a 2-week timeline. It turned out to be 2 days. Of course, we'll report this out whether or not that was part of the strategy here. The question was B-2 bombers, would they be used? We know they were. We know they flew all the way or halfway around the world to get to the Iranian airspace. And we presume that they did use those 30,000-pound bombs they would have to reach deep beneath that mountain there in Iran.
That's exactly right, David. They would almost have to have used those massive ordnance penetrators that can go so deeply into that mountainside. That's what Israel was waiting for. That's what Israel wanted to go over Fordo, because it really truly is the only bomb that could penetrate that deeply. I think one of the things that will have to be checked clearly is that the president clearly said this was a tremendous success. They destroyed it. Whether they can get people on the ground to see if it is completely destroyed, because an underground facility, you can't really tell, although they certainly have ways to find out as much as possible. But I think one thing tonight, David, that we really do have to say, it is clear the U.S. is now at war. It is exactly what we've been talking about all evening, that this is what the president wanted to avoid, but we are now there. And as we brace for possible retaliation, certainly Iran has suffered great loss, but they are perfectly capable of going after U.S. troops, and there are 40,000 of them in the region, David.
It's a very important point, Martha. Martha, thank you. And again, Martha, underscoring the fact that we are, as a nation, the U.S. now at war with Iran tonight. The president warning again on social media moments ago what he said at the top of the hour in his address to the American people, warning against retaliation from Iran, saying there would be even greater force, greater speed from the U.S. if Iran or its proxies retaliate in any sort of way. I want to get right back to our chief foreign correspondent, Ian Pannell, who has been live on the ground in Tel Aviv for us many nights in a row now here. Ian, for folks who are watching back here in the U.S., what particular threat do the American forces that Martha just spoke of, the tens of thousands who are spread throughout that region, what kind of threat do they face? You and I have been talking about how the air defenses in Iran have been significantly wiped out, perhaps 50% or more by the action taken by Israel in recent days. But that doesn't mean that there aren't ways for Iran and its proxies to retaliate.
Yeah, and that has been, in many senses, the speciality of Iran. It has contracted out its offensive operations. It's known as the world's #1 sponsor of terrorism. That's a phrase that we've heard repeatedly. The Houthi rebels inside Yemen, Hezbollah in Lebanon, Hamas also in Gaza, but also other groups. It has been guilty of malign activities, and you have a heavy U.S. military presence throughout the region.
guys.
in Iraq, in Syria, in Bahrain,
Jesse
and
says her
elsewhere.
kids are scared.
You have heavy
Jesse,
diplomatic
I'm
presence.
scared
We've
too.
seen diplomats being evacuated from here along with their families, and diplomatic presence elsewhere in the region reduced. We were reporting on World News just 24 hours or so ago about people American citizens trying to leave Iran, some reportedly experiencing difficulties doing that. So the US will be highly concerned about the potential for retaliatory strikes. Now, as you say, what is Iran's capacity? Israeli officials telling me that they believe that they have neutralized, that was their phrase, neutralized 50% of Iran's ability to fire missiles. Not necessarily the missiles themselves, but the launch systems. They say there's a bottleneck.
Sean,
in other words,
call
it
me
has
what
plenty
you
of
want,
missiles.
but I'm most
Its
definitely
capacity
afraid.
to launch
Oh my
them.
goodness.
But when Israel said that it controlled the skies, what that looks like on the ground is there are Israeli drones constantly over Tehran. Something that would have been unthinkable just a couple of weeks ago, especially to the Ayatollah, and Iran's capacity to gather intelligence, to respond, to act without interception has been severely diminished. Its key allies, Russia and China, are standing to one side. They have no appetite to get involved in this. I mean, conversely, Russia has benefited because the price of its own energy supplies has skyrocketed. But there are concerns specifically about the oil supplies that come out of Iran. 20% of the world's oil supplies go through the Straits of Hormuz. We saw previously that the Houthi rebels inside Yemen were capable of striking US carriers as well as other international carriers. That is a group specifically that I think we should be watching. That will have an impact on oil prices, and the US doesn't depend on oil from that region in the same way that the Europeans and the Chinese do, for sure, but it will have a potential knock-on effect. So there are a number of ways that Iran could retaliate. But the president was very clear. We shouldn't lose track of that.
Make sure you
that if
subscribe
Iran
to the channel if you're new.
acquiesce, that if it didn't sign up to some kind of peace process, there would be further action.
Ian, you and I both know that the president certainly has not talked about a regime change in any sort of way, and certainly didn't tonight in addressing the American people. Instead, obviously talking about the desire to, and he said they were completely, totally obliterated when he talked about Fordo, Natanz, and Esfahan, these 3 nuclear sites in Iran. But you can't help but to think about the future of the current leadership of Iran, and in particular the supreme leader, who the president has talked about in recent days. Obviously, too early to know, but it would seem the future for that supreme leader is somewhat in question.
I'm telling you, Big Slump, prayers for America, guys.
Exactly, and we've heard again repeatedly from the Israelis. I mean, certainly when there was that very heavy strike here, when that hospital was hit, we had the Israeli defense minister directly blaming and threatening the Iranian supreme leader, suggesting that he would be a valid target. Prime Minister Netanyahu and the Israeli president, who I spoke to, also said that he was a key part of the problem. But again, an Israeli military official talking to me on background was adamant that that wasn't part of the agenda. However, when you weaken an authoritarian regime like that, when you force someone like Ayatollah Ali Khamenei underground, he's not been seen in public apart from once or twice, that raises questions in people's minds. The regime lives and dies on its ability to project strength and actual physical coercive force on the ground, and that has been diminished. It has been suggested to us that the Israelis, as well as going after military targets, could go after state security targets. If those forces are no longer powerful, then it may well lead to further action. Certainly, Iranian, Persian friends that I know believe that people will respond on the ground. It's early days, we're not seeing it yet, but the capacity for self-generated change has now just gone up dramatically.
Okay, so Ian, panel, you bring up the very important point of the potential ways in which Iran could react across the region there. Ian, panel, tremendous reporting all week long, and we appreciate your coverage with us here on a Saturday night. Stick with us. I want to bring in Pierre Thomas, our Chief Justice Correspondent, back stateside, covering the domestic threat. Of course, people watching us here on a Saturday night, Pierre, want to know what is Iran's capability, not only to react overseas, throughout the region with thousands of U.S. military stationed across the region, but also here in the U.S. We know that there are lone wolves, there are actors that certainly Iran would hope would want to react in some sort of way to the U.S. action we witnessed tonight. What are U.S. authorities here in the Homeland prepared for potentially, and what have they said?
Continue to hit that like
Well,
button
David,
by
one of the
double
things they're
tapping that
most
screen,
concerned
guys.
about in the immediate future would be the potential for cyber attacks. Iran and its proxies have shown some capabilities to project from thousands of miles away. That's an immediate threat. DHS actually put out a notice just a couple of weeks ago after Israel started to attack Iran, warning the U.S. infrastructure, that's the electrical grid, energy sector, financial sector, to double check their computer systems to make sure that they have the proper defense mechanism. So that's a concern. There's obviously always been concern about the ability of Iran, to project inside the United States. Do they have operatives here? The U.S. government has made a number of cases involving Iranian operatives in the United States attempting to impact dissidents here, that sort of thing. Also, there would be concern about just a general reaction to the notion of the U.S. government, the U.S. military, taking a military strike to the homeland of Iran. So officials here will be looking at that kind of thing as well, David.
Pierre Thomas with us on the potential threat here at home as well. And of course, you say, Pierre, that what authorities within the administration are most concerned about at this point, and at this point, we point out it's very early in this sort of new chapter we're in, potential window of time here where there could be any kind of reaction, retaliation from Iran or its proxies. Most concerned about a potential cyber attack, as Pierre said, though there could be other operatives that the U.S. Is keeping its eye on as well. I want to bring in Rachel Scott, our senior political correspondent, and Rachel obviously covers the White House, Capitol Hill. She covered President Trump as a candidate. And Rachel, you heard Mary and I talking about this notion earlier that this is a president, obviously, who has campaigned not just in this campaign when he was elected back to the White House, but in the campaign leading to his election in 2016 on campaigning against American interventionism, against American, any kind of a role for the U.S. and U.S. military in the Middle East, any kind of increased role in these costly, dangerous conflicts.
Let me pause this for half a second, man. If you're in the building and can hear the sound of my voice, please take time to double tap that screen. Most definitely subscribe to the channel. This is live coverage of everything that we're hearing and what we know about what just happened in Iran involving the U.S. We just got involved in the Israel-Iran conflict, man. You know, Iran basically vowed retaliation that we got involved, and we're most definitely involved. You know, do you think this is a good thing or a bad thing? Y'all continue to get those likes up by double tapping your screen if you're on a mobile device or clicking those three dots, hitting that thumbs up, man. It most definitely helps out the channel. Shout out to everybody in the building.
His supporters will say that's not in conflict with what he has also said about nuclear war, and that Iran should never get its hands on a nuclear weapon. And that's the case he's trying to make in these last couple of days leading up to this action that he authorized tonight.
Yeah, his supporters definitely, David, will say both things can be true here, that the president can be adamant that Iran can never have a nuclear weapon, but also at the same time can still want to be a unifier, a peacemaker. You heard those calls for peace again today coming from the president as he addressed the nation again tonight. But there is no doubt this has created a divide within the Republican Party, even leading up to this. As we were reporting that the president was warming up to the idea of U.S. involvement, of possibly striking Iran, we heard from a number of Republicans who did not want the president to move forward with this, who expressed concern and frustration about the U.S. being involved, primarily because of that campaign promise that the president made, that he was going to be a unifier, that he was going to be a peacemaker, that he was going to withdraw the United States from these ongoing foreign conflicts. This, of course, directly goes against that. It's at odds with that. At the same time, David, I will tell you that speaking to my sources and Republican members on Capitol Hill, the president received numerous calls from Republican lawmakers, even from Senator Lindsey Graham, who was urging the president to get directly involved. He wanted to see the United States join Israel's effort in this. And obviously, the president also, I'm told, getting a lot of pressure directly from Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu as well. We've also been working the phones, David. We are learning tonight that Speaker Mike Johnson and also Senate Majority Leader John Thune were in fact notified that the U.S. was going to be carrying out these strikes. We're also told that Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries was was also notified as well, but given very little details. We are also told, David, from multiple sources that the Gang of Eight, this is the top leaders on Capitol Hill in both the Senate and the House, that they were not given a full briefing as the United States made this decision, the Trump administration making this decision to move forward with these strikes, David.
Rachel Scott covering this as well with us here tonight. Rachel, always great to have you with you and your context as well. I do want to mention the statement that's been released by the Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu of Israel, obviously, video statement. He congratulated President Trump for his, quote, bold decision to target Iran's nuclear facilities. The United States, Netanyahu said, has done what no other country on earth could do. History will record that President Trump acted to deny the world's most dangerous regime, the world's most dangerous weapons. And as you heard Rachel say, you heard other correspondents here along the way point out that this was exactly what Benjamin Netanyahu had been hoping for, that the U.S. Would become directly involved with Iran, which is what played out tonight. President Trump addressing the nation about 53 minutes ago now to let the nation know that the U.S. military has struck 3 nuclear sites deep inside Iran, Fordo, Natanz, and Esfahan. Obviously, Fordo is the site that in particular, deep beneath the ground, beneath that mountain, B-2 bombers were used. We believe those 30,000-pound bombs were also used to target these sites. The president saying they are completely, totally obliterated, though we'll have to see in the hours and days to come what kind of assessment from international observers can be made about the damage done tonight, though clearly there was significant damage done, and the White House believes beyond repair in many cases. I want to bring in retired Colonel Steve Ganyard again with us. Steve, you and I have been talking about U.S. military capability, and regardless of where people stand on this politically, this was a significant use of force tonight, and something that has long been studied by not only this administration but administrations before it. President Trump, the president who has decided to move forward with this in a key moment when air defenses were significantly weakened in the skies over Iran, Israel essentially controlling those skies as U.S. B-2 bombers flew in tonight.
Yeah, David, John Carl is reporting that Tomahawk missiles were also used in the strikes tonight. Now, Tomahawk missiles, as you remember, are cruise missiles, and they hug the earth, so they fly very low, and they aren't intended to do this deep penetration that we needed the B-2s for. So the point here is that it really was just the B-2 crews that were in danger tonight. We didn't put any other U.S. forces over Iran, so there's very little risk other than to those B-2 crews. Given how sophisticated the B-2 is, there's very little likelihood that the Iranians would be able to do anything about it. So the question will be, how far will the president be willing to go, depending on the Iranian reaction, in terms of deploying military force that may involve putting U.S. forces at greater risk than we saw tonight.
And of course, Steve, you heard the president there warn that if peace doesn't come quickly from Iran now, that we will go after additional targets with speed and with skill. We have that animation that shows what these bunker buster bombs can do. If we can show that, because a U.S. official now confirms that B-2 bombers dropped a number of massive ordnance penetrator bombs. As you know, that's the long term for these bunker buster bombs, 30,000-pound bombs. Now confirming to ABC News that they were used in this mission tonight over Iran. The official also confirming that a number of Tomahawk cruise missiles were fired at targets inside Iran from a U.S. Navy submarine. You heard President Trump addressing the nation 10 p.m. Eastern here tonight. Brief words, and then getting on social media again shortly thereafter to warn Iran and its proxies against any sort of retaliation. But at first word tonight, which came shortly before 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern time, the president saying, we have completed our very successful attack on 3 nuclear sites in Iran, including Fordo, Natanz, and Esfahan. All planes are now outside Iranian airspace. A full payload of bombs, he said, was dropped on that primary site of Fordo. That is the key site that is deep beneath sort of a range of mountains there. And we had reported for some time that it would probably take those bunker busters to actually do significant damage to that nuclear facility. And again, ABC News now confirming that those B-2 bombers did drop those 30,000-pound bombs. Our coverage will continue first thing in the morning. for many of you, your local news is next.
Guys.
Good night.
This is crazy, y'all. This is crazy, but we not done, man. It's most definitely more, man. Everybody's reporting on this situation that's going on, basically, with what we did. Let me switch over to another station. Hold on, give me a second. We most definitely gonna get everything that we can regarding this situation, y'all, and some of Trump's tweets. Let me move this one forward a little bit. They was talking about it just a second ago. Hold up. You know what I'm saying? While I pull up more. Hold on.
Concerned about what Iran has or doesn't have. At this point, I can tell you this, based on that Iran does not have a capability to use any of those cylinders with their 60% enriched uranium for anything. One thing will be interesting is to find out how much residual radiation is in that area. Now, those things are really deep, and everything I've seen from the targeting standpoint would indicate that the radiation would be very localized. That site wouldn't be that much. Same with the other sites. It wasn't really assessed that the radiation would be that big. By the way, I should mention, Isfahan is a little bit different. That is not a uranium enrichment site. That was actually a heavy water site. And out of that heavy water process, the byproduct or the product of that is plutonium. And of course, plutonium could also be used to make a nuclear bomb. So that's a little bit different
we
site.
use bunker buster,
just how broad the program was that
man, this is crazy,
Iran was pursuing, that they were enriching uranium for a nuclear device with uranium. They also had a place that was producing plutonium for a device using plutonium. So they were, pardon the expression, kind of hedging their bets in the nuclear weapons development area.
Al, getting more clarity on when the president will address the nation. Caroline Leavitt, the press secretary, says 10 Eastern time. So we'll expect in about an hour and 40 minutes the president to address the nation on these strikes. We've been hearing from Iran's supreme leader. He's been threatening the U.S. if the U.S. gets involved in this. What avenues does Iran actually have to hit back at the U.S.?
That's an interesting one, and that's one of the reasons you have those carriers in place. That's one of the reasons you have all the cruisers and everything else in place. They can use, obviously, what they have been doing, drones and ballistic missiles, and I would expect to see a lot of those launched. The question is, will they start attacking U.S. facilities, U.S. bases in the Persian Gulf? We have bases in Syria, Al-Assad, in Iraq, where I used to be based, Kuwait, where I used to be based, Bahrain, where I was kind of for a little bit based, and UAE, all up and down. So the fear is that those things would all come under attack. And all those host nations, obviously, we're very concerned about that too. So that's one of the fears. The other big fear in terms of traditional military application is the Straits of Hormuz. That is that strait that basically is how they exit the Persian or Arab Gulf into the Indian Ocean. Obviously,
we got a new report. Hold on. Hold up. I'm finna take us somewhere else.
If that was to be blocked, that
we got Chris Kumo basically talking about he feels like that Iran is most definitely gonna retaliate against the U.S. Oh man, this ain't good, y'all. This ain't good. He basically saying that he feels like they will retaliate against us. Give me a second while I pull this up, guys. Continue to work on that like button by double tapping that screen or clicking those 3 dots, hitting that thumbs up, man. Most definitely subscribe to the channel if you're new. Man, this is crazy, y'all. Hold on. Breaking news: Trump has got us involved in what's going on in Iran and Israel.
It was Barack Obama talking about the killing of Osama bin Laden. That was on a Sunday night from the East Room, an address to the nation. This one was much shorter. The fact that he went through all of the bad acts by Iran, talking about them as the bully of the Middle East for the past 40 years. We haven't heard a president speak like that. This, I think you saw a level of emotion from President Trump conveying to the American people that he was angry. Angry at what Iran had done in the past. And you think about just in the past hour or so, the Iranians themselves said, you started this, Mr. Trump. We will end it, with a map of where U.S. bases are in the Middle East. And you and I have talked about that same map a number of times. Chris, and said that people should pray for the troops. That was the Iranians speaking. So I think that the message that the president was given tonight was not so much for the American people. This wasn't hand-holding, I am the commander-in-chief, rally around the flag kind of speech. This was a speech directed at the Iranian regime. He said they will make peace or there will be future attacks which are far easier. And
man, y'all, Trump issued that chilling statement. Shout out to Amazingly Beautiful. Thank you.
Moved into the Middle East over the past week that you and I have talked about a lot. The Pentagon is ready to launch a sustained bombing campaign, and then also ready to deal with the Iranian response, whether it be closing the Strait of Hormuz, that would send oil prices into the hundreds of dollars a barrel, send gas prices up at least $1 here in the United States, or whether it's attacks against U.S. bases overseas.
Leland, let me ask you something. There is an assumption.
This is crazy, y'all. Continue to get those likes up.
The regime knows better than to retaliate. Help us understand, from your time reporting in the region and the research and reporting you've done, how much sense that makes to believe that this regime could have something like this happen and come to the table instead of come back?
It's a great question. And I would just look back at history. You think about Benjamin Netanyahu over the past 18 months has escalated against the Iranians, against the advice, and you could call it the blob in Washington, right? All the people who say you can't escalate against the Iranians, it's going to be World War III, it's going to be all-out war in the Middle East.
I don't know why, Amazingly Beautiful. We most definitely in the middle of it now.
They took out
we done went over there and dropped Buster,
that was the Iranians'
basically Buster bombs
then over
on Iran's top 3 nuclear sites.
The Israelis took out the Iranians' air defenses. And the Iranians responded as best they could. Remember, there was those 2 big missile barrages and drone attacks, all of which were shot down. And I think the question for the Iranian regime, and this is probably what is being put to them in the back channel, is pretty simple. If you want to stay alive, this ends.
Man, 6 I agree, all
regime,
going up
we'd be happy
by
to do that
hundreds.
for
Man,
you.
this is
is
this good or bad, guys? Let me know.
A point where the Iranians are sort of given the choice, right? The Iranians believe in martyrdom for everybody else. That was the whole death to America. They had Hezbollah, they had Hamas, they had suicide bombers against the United States, on and on and on. Now they're going to be asked, the Iranian regime is going to be asked, do you believe in martyrdom for yourselves? And I think that the amount of U.S. firepower that is now in the Middle East can credibly make that threat.
What do you think should be the level of sensitivity back here at home? You know, one of the things that the president left open by not doing a let's come together speech is he's going to have a lot of people within his own base who are really pissed about this and what it means. So does that matter, or does he just focus
Mar
on
said,
whether
this
or
is
not
not our
we
fight,
have
man. I know, man. This is crazy.
That do something
we always
stupid?
getting ourselves in a heap of trouble, man, by interfering in other people's stuff, man.
Homegrown terror attacks, or are you talking about Marjorie Taylor Greene and Tucker Carlson mouthing off?
Now, Israel most definitely said they had to.
I think both, but really,
they said. Now, Israel said they had the technology, you know, to launch missiles our way that could actually make it to the United States from Iran, guys.
How much does it matter to Trump that he has people within the pod bros who are calling for his impeachment because of this? And that was theoretical. Now it's actually happened. And all of these crazy fundamentalists that we see in the country just killing people out of political exasperation.
Well, look, the idea that there is the possibility of Iranian sleeper cells in the United States, you'd have to be foolish to think there are not. And you're coming up on July 4th here. What is this, June 21st? So 14 days from now, 2 weeks, where every small town in America becomes a soft target at a fireworks display. You can imagine the FBI and others working overtime right now to think about that. That would be number one. Does Donald Trump care about the pod bros? Not at all. I think we've realized in this second term, Chris, and you and I have talked about it a lot. President Trump does not care anymore. And you can say that his base, or there's parts of his base that are upset about this. There has been no one who's understood his base better than Donald Trump has. And when America is projecting strength, when the president is being the commander in chief, there is almost no better moment. I think that 8 a.m. press conference.
Shout out to the only 1, 2, 3 for that $5. Appreciate you, big dog.
You said Secretary of Defense and the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs. Raising Cane, the general's former Air Force pilot, I believe, is he not? I'm sitting here next to a Air Force one-star John Tykert, who just nodded along with that. But I think they're going to be the ones who are going to lay out a lot more of the intelligence. But you're right to point out that we don't know what switch flipped in the president's head. And the fact that he said so much about Benjamin Netanyahu in this speech, I think tells you that at some point Netanyahu convinced President Trump that the Israelis had better intel than the United States did about the Iranian intentions, and that something changed. And if you're the Israelis, you really don't want to reveal that, because that's sources and methods who are probably still inside Iran right now that the Israelis are relying on. But there's something that has changed about President Trump. And I think also it could be the fact that he felt like he got played over the past 60 days with the Iranians, that the Iranians weren't serious. And remember that it was yesterday that the Iranians said, oh, we're happy to talk once the Israelis stop. And that may have been what pushed
this
President
is crazy,
Trump,
man.
It showed that the Iranians were fundamentally
What is the likelihood that they will retaliate,
So the
guys?
weakest part of this right now is Bibi Netanyahu saying things had changed and that there was an urgency. Everybody has seen the memes of how many times he has said that in the last 15
I'm telling you, Pleasant, I don't know what to think, man. All I can say is this is crazy, guys. Continue to get those likes up, though. Click that 3 dots, hit that thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel if you're new, man.
The Iranians were within weeks of a nuclear weapon. She's hardly a Benjamin Netanyahu apologist. I think we're focused a little bit too much on the justification at this moment of why. And I think the fact that the Israelis had held off for so long, and then they themselves, in retrospect, or in hindsight, I should say, it looks, rest assured, that the Israelis had this enormous success. What they did 9 days ago was unthinkable, even to people like me who studied the Israeli attack plans, understood how they thought about things. And always
100% likely they will respond. Dang, slump.
The scope and scale of what they did was unthinkable. And in hindsight, it looks as though it was rest assured that it was going to work. I don't think we can do that. I think they took an enormous risk 9 days ago because they felt like they had to. And I think the Middle East will never be the same. It wasn't the same after the 6-Day War and the Yom Kippur War. Fast forward now, it's not going to be the same after between October 7th and these attacks.
No, I think that is a sound
turn it around. All right, so let me take y'all. Hold on, we're going to pause this right here.
Which is, who can...
We're going to pause this right here. Hold up. Hold on. We finna transform over here so y'all can see the initial statement in case you just got here that Trump put out. Hold on. Hold up.
Nuclear facilities in the Iranian regime.
CBS is reporting 6 B-2 stealth fighters dropped 30,000-pound bunker buster bombs on at least one of those sites, the very first time that weapon has been used in combat. Today, it was to destroy an underground nuclear facility about 60 miles southeast of Tehran. The president said that all American planes are safely now out of Iranian airspace. These American strikes are in support of a war that Israel launched on Iran 9 days ago. We know tonight that the Israeli Prime Minister has spoken to the president, thanked him, and congratulated him on the strikes. We are awaiting word now from the President of the United States himself, who is expected to address the nation from the White House.
Yes, y'all, it's crazy.
As we await him taking the podium, I want to go to our White House correspondent, Weijia Jiang. Weijia, we know that the president returned to the White House in the 5 o'clock hour, around 6 p.m. He had a national security briefing. What do we know about what was going on at that period of time?
Margaret, that's right. He was in his golf club in Bedminster, New Jersey, but came back this evening, which was actually always the plan, even when he took off for that trip. And right beforehand, he said that Iran had at maximum 2 weeks to try to reach a diplomatic deal. There was no indication at that time that he was going to follow through with the strikes, but of course that quickly changed.
We see the president now.
The U.S. military carried out massive precision strikes on the 3 key nuclear facilities in the Iranian regime, Fordow, Natanz, and Esfahan. Everybody heard those names for years as they built this horribly destructive enterprise. Our objective was the destruction of Iran's nuclear enrichment capacity and a stop to the nuclear threat posed by the world's #1 state sponsor of terror. Tonight, I can report to the world that the strikes were a spectacular military success. Iran's key nuclear enrichment facilities have been completely and totally obliterated. Iran, the bully of the Middle East, must now make peace. If they do not, future attacks will be far greater and a lot easier. For 40 years, Iran has been saying death to America, death to Israel. They have been killing our people, blowing off their arms, blowing off their legs with roadside bombs. That was their specialty. We lost over 1,000 people, and hundreds of thousands throughout the Middle East and around the world have died as a direct result of their hate. In particular, so many were killed by their general, Qasem Soleimani. I decided a long time ago that I would not let this happen. It will not continue. I want to thank and congratulate Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu. We worked as a team like perhaps no team has ever worked before. And we've gone a long way to erasing this horrible threat to Israel. I want to thank the Israeli military for the wonderful job they've done. And most importantly, I want to congratulate the great American patriots who flew those magnificent machines tonight and all of the United States military on an operation the likes of which the world has not seen in many, many decades. Hopefully, we will no longer need their services in this capacity. I hope that's so. I also want to congratulate the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Dan Raisin-Kane, spectacular general, and all of the brilliant military minds involved in this attack. With all of that being said, this cannot continue. There will be either peace or there will be tragedy for Iran far greater than we have witnessed over the last 8 days. Remember, there are many targets left. Tonight's was the most difficult of them all, by far, and perhaps the most lethal. But if peace does not come quickly, we will go after those other targets with precision, speed, and skill. Most of them can be taken out in a matter of minutes. There's no military in the world that could have done what we did tonight, not even close. There has never been a military that could do what took place just a little while ago. Tomorrow, General Kane, Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth will have a press conference at 8 a.m.
Trump got us in the middle of this, guys. Can we get 500 on that like? We need 60 more people to double tap that screen, or click those 3 dots, hit that thumbs up, subscribe to the channel if you're new. This is Trump on the U.S. getting involved in Iran and Israel's situation.
The Pentagon, and I want to just thank everybody, and in particular, God. I want to just say we love you, God, and we love our great military. Protect them. God bless the Middle East. God bless Israel. And God bless America. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Walked off like a boss.
That's so. I also want to...
President of the United States walking away from the podium there where he had been flanked by the Secretary of State and National Security Advisor Marco Rubio, along with Secretary of Defense and his Vice President, announcing and congratulating the military on what he called spectacular military success in these strikes that were carried out inside Iran earlier today. He said the sites were, quote, completely obliterated. Now, he did seem in those remarks not to completely close the door on further military action. He thanked the U.S. military and said that he hopes that their services won't be needed again. And he said all of this was meant to erase the nuclear threat posed by Iran. To be clear, U.S. intelligence assessment has been that Iran was not yet building a nuclear weapon, but that they had been enriching nuclear fuel at worrisome levels. The international community had high degree of outcry on that point just a few weeks ago in Vienna. You had the Israeli strikes come the following day after that, in the midst of what had been a diplomatic effort by President Trump and his envoy Steve Witkoff to negotiate with Iran to get them to limit their nuclear program. Those did not result in an agreement, though up until today, I am told, the U.S. was trying to reach out.
These are the spots that we hit, guys.
Just a few hours ago, we saw these strikes carried out. I want to go over to the Pentagon now, where our Charlie D'Agata is. And apparently, Charlie, you'll be there early tomorrow, since the president just said there will be an 8 a.m. Pentagon press conference where he will detail these strikes. The Secretary of Defense will. What do we know at this hour? I know Iran is acknowledging and saying that these strikes happened, but that it will not end their nuclear program.
Yeah, well, Margaret, we await that briefing tomorrow. We have had very few briefings here at the Pentagon, so it'll be interesting to see how much detail is shared there. But as it was already shared, 6 bunker busters on Fordow, that would have meant...
we dropped 6 bunker busters, on Iran, guys. Continue to get those likes up. We 30 away from 500. Can we get 500 on the like? And most definitely subscribe to the channel if you're new. This is everything that we know about what Trump just did, basically getting us in the middle of Israel and Iran.
These 3 of the B-2 bombers that we've already discussed, where they came from, when they were deployed. We were talking earlier today about whether they went from Whiteman, whether they were going to Guam. Maybe it was a head pump, maybe it was a head shake of where this was going to go and when it was going to happen. Something like 30 Tomahawk missiles at 2 other sites there. They've been called massive precision strikes. I think what we need to know, and I'm not sure whether that is knowable at this point, is how damaging that was. If the White House is to be believed, whether it crippled entirely, took out Iran's nuclear capabilities at Fordow, Natanz, and Safran. He's calling it a spectacular success. But the other thing we need to be concerned about now is he mentioned when he took out Qassam, the assassination of Qassam Soleimani, when he was president. And we saw the retaliation.
Yes, the last time he was the president. And they hated Trump for taking out Soleimani. And now he's came back and blew up 3 of their nuclear sites, guys. They vowed revenge if he was to come interfere in between what they had going on with Israel. And we most definitely did that, y'all. Oh, my goodness, man. Oh, my goodness. So thick. What's up?
And then across multiple American targets. There are 40,000 U.S. service members spread throughout the Middle East, and they have come under attack before. And we've already known, even leading up to this, because it was always a what if, but leading up to where we are now, we've been speaking to people here at the Pentagon, DOD, saying if there is an Iranian retaliation, how are we postured? How is the United States postured to defend against that? There are multiple, in fact, I can't remember how many times or the last time we've seen this many military assets flooded into that area in order to defend against a possible Iranian retaliation to protect U.S. forces there.
No doubt that force posture has been really built up in these past few days. At the same time, it was just this morning that we heard the U.S. ambassador to Israel, Mike Huckabee, announce with detail for the very first time how Americans in Israel could actually safely get out. The U.S. government brought about 70 of them by plane to Greece, evacuating them from the area. The airspace over Israel has been closed for days, so it has made it hard for people to leave if they wanted to, because there has been this back and forth with Iran's retaliation against Israel, some of those missiles piercing their defenses, those U.S.-provided defenses in many ways. And I know it has been remarkable, Charlie, that whether we're talking to current or former officials, they all seem to say it's amazing we haven't yet seen retaliation.
These are the places
we
that
haven't
we
yet seen a
15
strike
more likes,
against
guys. We'll
a
be at
U.S.
500.
base
Click
or
those
U.S.
three dots, hit
assets.
that thumbs up.
Now that the United States has entered this conflict in this way, that may change. And I've no doubt that there is a bracing for what could be coming next. I spoke to some diplomats in the region just within the past hour, and I was told there wasn't much of a heads up given to some of our allies there. Just to remind people, Charlie spoke about 40,000 U.S. military personnel in that region of the world. The fourth largest military installation America has in the world is in Kuwait.
I have
very
no
close
idea.
there to
I have
Iran.
no idea.
Very significant naval assets in Bahrain.
But this
a
is
lot
crazy,
of American
guys.
families stationed
13
there.
more
So
likes
it's
to
not
500.
just Israel, it is the surrounding Arab countries that the U.S. is allied with who are holding their breath tonight, wondering if hosting those American forces also makes them a target. So we're going to be watching all those bases that you see there on the screen, as well as some of the other American assets in the region. I also just want to acknowledge here that while the president has been saying this was a successful strike, we don't yet know what the end game is here. We don't know that from the United States, and we don't know that from the nation of Israel either.
This is big
the
trouble,
goal
guys.
was stated to be destruction of Iran's nuclear program. Tonight, you have out of Iran statements from their atomic agency saying that this national industry, as they refer to it, will not be stopped, that you can't kill knowledge. There have been, of course, assassinations of nuclear scientists, as we know. We want to go now on the phone. We are joined by General Frank McKenzie, who was the
I'm just worried about the
combatant commander
thing.
there
That's all
in the
that
Middle
worries
East for
me.
so many years. General McKenzie, I hope you can hear me now. I know you have literally gamed out this scenario for years when you were in the job. What are those U.S. military families? What are those soldiers and naval men? What are they bracing for tonight? What should we expect with the light of day?
Mama 3 says exactly.
I've worked on this plan for 15 years. It looks like a successful strike. As you noted, we'll know more in the hours and days ahead how successful it actually was.
Double tap that
But what
screen
the
and
Central
click
Command
those three
Commander right
dots,
now
hit
is
that
most
thumbs
concerned
up. It
about
helps
is
the
the
channel.
possible
Subscribe if you're
Iranian
new.
response. What's it going to be? What are they going to do? And a lot of the thinking over the last few days, I'm sure, in the Department of Defense has been how to prepare for that inevitable Iranian response. And so we flowed forces in. We'll be ready for it. What we want to do is avoid a significant loss of American life that would then push us up the escalatory ladder. So we want to save the Iranians from themselves. We want to maintain balance in the region if we can. And that's what the CENTCOM commander is going to be working on right now. I would also note that Iran is gravely weakened as a result of their exchanges with Israel over the past few weeks, and in fact over the last year or so. So this is a very significant thing to bear in mind as we look at what the Iranians might do in response. The final thing I will say is this. The Iranians have held all the lower cards on the escalation ladder. But the simple fact is this. We hold all the higher cards on the escalation ladder, as does Israel, and the Iranians know that.
Well, General, to that point, I was speaking to an Iran analyst just a day ago who described this regime as homicidal but not suicidal, meaning they would restrain themselves from a head-to-head conflict with the United States. as you just pointed out.
Hold on, we got some breaking going on right now. We got some breaking going on. They got Iran. Basically, it says Iran Supreme Leader speech on U.S. joining Israel conflict after Trump attacks Iran. Uh-oh. Let's check this out. Hold on. We got to go over here, y'all. Oh, man. Let's see what he's talking about.
این کنتون مؤمنین این رو بهش ملت ایران معتقده تهدید تاثیر نمیگذاره در رفتار ملت ایران در اندیشه ملت ایران. ثانیاً اینی که به ملت ایران بگم بیایید تسلیم بشید حرف عاقلانه ای نیست. افراد با خرد که میشناسن ایران رو، میشناسن ملت ایران رو، میشناسن تاریخ ایران رو، هرگز چنین حرفی رو بر زبان جاری نمیکنن.
Hello, I know what to do.
تسلیم چی بشن؟ ملت ایران تسلیم شدنی
I know
نیست.
exactly what to do.
ما تعرض به کسی نکردیم و به هیچ وجه تعرض احدی رو هم قبول نمی‌کنیم و تسلیم تعرض هیچ کس نمیشیم. منطق ملت ایرانه، این رویه ملت ایران. و البته آمریکایی‌ها اونهایی که با سیاست‌های این منطقه آشنا هستن میدانند که ورود آمریکا در این قضیه 100% به ضرر اوست. اونچه که او در این زمینه ضربه خواهد خورد به مراتب بیشتر است از اونچه که ایران ممکنه صدمه بخوره. صدمه آمریکا اگر ورود در این میدان بشه، ورود نظامی در این میدان بکنه، صدمه جبران ناپذیری خواهد بود بدون تردید. من به ملت عزیزمون عرض میکنم همین آیه شریفه رو همیشه در نظر داشته باشید. زندگی به حمدالله به طور عادی در جریانه. نگذارید دشمن احساس کنه که شما در مقابل او میترسید، احساس ضعف. اگر دشمن احساس کنه که شما از او میترسید دیگه شما رو گریبان شما رو راه نخواهد. همین رفتاری که تا امروز داشتید رفتار رو با قدرت ادامه بدید. کسانی که امور خدماتی به عهده‌شون هست، کسانی که با مردم سر و کار دارن، کسانی که امور تبلیغاتی طبیعی بر عهده‌شون هست، کار خودشون رو با قدرت انجام بدن و ادامه بدن و به خدای متعال توکل کنن. و من نصر الله العزیز الحکیم و خدای متعال ملت ایران رو و حقیقت رو و حق رو به طور قطع و یقین پیروز خواهد کرد انشاءالله. مطلب اولی که مایلم عرض بکنم تمجید از رفتار ملت عزیزمون در این قضیه است که اخیراً دشمنان برای کشور پیش برد. ملت ایران نشان داد که هم متین، هم شجاع، هم وقت شناس این حرکت عظیمی که مردم در روز جشن قدیر نشان دادن به دنیا.
Yes, we know. This is what they were saying if the U.S. decided to join in with Israel on what's going on. We know what it says. Nobody said that it was actually happening right now. This is just them saying what they were gonna do if we got in it. Yeah, I know. Twisted Face want to be. Yeah, I already know, Ballin. That's crazy. Everything I do, they do.
معنویت همراه با شجاعت و وقت شناسی در ملت عزیزمون هست. خدا رو
This is one of Iran's leaders, guys.
که به حمدالله این ملت مؤمن رو در این حد از توانایی ها و امکانات معنوی و مادی قرار داد. من لازم میدونم همینجا اشاره کنم به حرکت زیبا و پرمعنایی که اون بانوی مجری تلویزیون در مقابل حمله دشمن انجام داد. تکبیر گفتن و نشانه قدرت ملت رو در واقع به همه دنیا ارائه کردن، این حادثه با ارزشی است. مطلب دوم این است که این حادثه تهاجم ابلهانه و خباثت آلود رژیم صهیونیستی به کشورمون در حالی رخ داد که مسئولین دولتی با طرف آمریکایی به طور غیر مستقیم و با واسطه مشغول مذاکره بودن. هیچ موضوعی از سوی ایران وجود نداشت که نشانه این باشه یک حرکت نظامی
Let's go, Rama. I don't know what he's saying. But if you read the screen, what he's saying is
البته از اول حرف زده میشد که در این حرکت خباثت آمیز
Exactly, Oasis. They seem like they'll get down with it.
با این حرفای اخیری که اینها میزنن این هست روز به روز تقویت میشه. ملت ایران در مقابل جنگ تحمیلی محکم میسته، همچنانی که تا حالا ایستاده. در مقابل صلح تحمیلی محکم میسته. ملت ایران در مقابل تحمیل تسلیمی هیچ کس نمیشه. این معانی رو من انتظار دارم که صاحبان فکر و صاحبان بیان و قلم بخصوص مرتبطین با افکار عمومی جهانیان این مفاهیم رو بیان کنند، برای خاطرین روشن کنند.
This is one of the leaders in Iran. You know, basically he was talking about what would happen if we got involved in this situation.
دشمن صهیونی یک اشتباه بزرگی کرده، یک جنایت بزرگی رو مرتکب شده و باید مجازات بشه و داره مجازات میشه. حالا داره مجازات میشه. مجازاتی که ملت ایران برای این دشمن خبیث انجام دادن و دارن انجام میدن و برای آینده برنامه دارن، مجازات سختی است و او رو دچار ضعف کرده. همینی هم که دوستان آمریکاییش وارد صحنه میشن و حرف میزنن نشانه ضعف. مطلب آخر هم این که اخیراً رئیس جمهور آمریکا زبان به تهدید گشوده. ما رو تهدید میکنه، هم تهدید میکنه، هم با یک بیان سخیف و غیر قابل قبولی از ملت ایران صریحاً میخواد که بیایید تسلیم من بشید. وقتی انسان این چیزها رو مشاهده میکنه واقعا تعجب میکنه. اولا تهدید رو به کسی بکنن که از تهدید اونها میترسه. ملت ایران نشان داده که در مقابل تهدید کنندگان دچار ترس نمیشه و لا تهینوا ولا تحزنوا وانتم الاعلون ان کنتم مؤمنین. این رو بهش ملت ایران معتقده. تهدید تاثیر نمیگذاره در رفتار ملت ایران، در اندیشه ملت ایران. ثانیاً اینی که به ملت ایران بگم بیایید تسلیم بشید
Kenya, that's
حرف
what they
آقلانی
saying.
نیست افراد با خرد
He most definitely said America. Y'all seen it go across the screen.
میشناسن
And talked about our
کسی این
president.
حرفی رو بر زبان جاری نمیکنن. تسلیم چی بگن؟ ملت ایران تسلیم شدنی نیست. ما تعرض به کسی نکردیم و به هیچ وجه تعرض احدی رو هم قبول نمی‌کنیم و تسلیم تعرض هیچ کس نمی‌شیم. منطق ملت ایرانه، این رویه ملت ایران.
Loyal, that's what they saying.
و البته
Continue to double tap that screen, guys. Get the lights up. This is one of the Iranian leaders where he spoke about what would happen if a U.S. Oh my goodness, what would happen if we got involved?
اونچه که او در این زمینه ضربه خواهد خورد به مراتب بیشتر است از اونچه که ایران ممکنه صدمه بخوره. صدمه آمریکا اگر ورود در این میدان بشه، ورود نظامی در این میدان بکنه، صدمه جبران ناپذیری خواهد بود بدون تردید. من به ملت عزیزمون عرض میکنم همین آیه شریفه رو همیشه در نظر داشته باشید. زندگی و الحمدلله به طور عادی در جریانه. نگذارید دشمن احساس کنه که شما در مقابل او میترسید، احساس ضعف میکنید. اگر دشمن احساس کنه که شما از او میترسید دیگه شما رو گریبان شما رو راه نخواهد کرد. همین رفتاری که تا امروز داشتید این رفتار رو با قوت ادامه بدید. کسانی که امور خدماتی به عهدهشون هست، کسانی که با مردم سر و کار دارن، کسانی که امور تبلیغاتی و تبیینی بر عهدهشون هست، کار خودشون رو با قوت انجام بدن و ادامه بدن و به خدای متعال توکل کنن و من نصر الله
He's most definitely talking about the Americans, guys.
و خدای متعال ملت ایران رو و حقیقت رو و حق رو به طور قطع و یقین پیروز خواهد کرد انشاءالله. و مطلب اولی که مایلم تمجید از رفتار ملت عزیزمون در این قضیه است که اخیراً دشمنان برای کشور پیش برد. ملت ایران نشان داد که هم متین، هم شجاع، هم وقت شناس این حرکت عظیمی که مردم در روز جشن قدیر نشان دادن به دنیا. حرکت عظیمی بود.
Shout out to 3,000 Degrees for being a member for the last 8 months. He is most definitely talking about us, guys. He said U.S., he said America, and he said something about our president.
همه اینها نشان دهنده رشد ملت ایران و قوام عقلانیت و معنویت همراه با شجاعت و وقت شناسی در ملت عزیزمون هست. خدا رو شکر میکنم که الحمدلله این ملت مؤمن رو در این حد از توانایی ها و امکانات معنوی و مادی قرار داد. من لازم میدونم همینجا اشاره کنم به حرکت زیبا و پرمعنایی که اون بانوی مجری در مقابل حمله دشمن تکبیر گفتن
Some Trump told that what he was going to do and some he didn't.
قدرت ملت رو در واقع به همه دنیا ارائه کردن. این حادثه تاریخی بود، حادثه بسیار با ارزشی است. مطلب دوم این است که این حادثه تهاجم ابلهانه و خباثت آلود رژیم صهیونیستی به کشور ما در حالی رخ داد که مسئولین دولتی با طرف آمریکایی به طور غیر مستقیم و با واسطه باشون مذاکره بودن. هیچ موضوعی از سوی ایران وجود نداشت که نشانه این باشه یک حرکت نظامی یا یک حرکت تندی سختی وجود داره. البته از اول حد زده میشد که در این حرکت خباثت آمیز ولی با این حرفایی اخیری که میزنن این هست ملت ایران در مقابل جنگ تحمیلی محکم نیسته همچنانی که تا حالا ایستاده. در مقابل صلح تحمیلی محکم نیسته. ملت ایران در مقابل تحمیل تسلیمی هیچ کس نمیشه. این معانی رو من انتظار دارم که صاحبان فکر و صاحبان بیان و قلم به خصوص مرتبطین با افکار عمومی جهانیان این مفاهیم رو بیان کنن، تبیین کنن، برای مخاطبین روشن کنن، اجازه ندن که دشمن حقیقت رو دگرگون جلوه. دشمن صهیونی اشتباه بزرگی کرده، یک جنایت بزرگی رو مرتکب شده و باید مجازات بشه و داره مجازات میشه. همین حالا داره مجازات میشه. مجازاتی که ملت ایران و نیروهای مسلح ما برای این دشمن خبیث انجام دادن و دارن انجام میدن و برای آینده برنامه دارن مجازات سختی است و او رو دچار ضعف کرده. همینی هم که دوستان آمریکاییش وارد صحنه میشن و حرف میزنن نشانه ضعف و نشانه ناتوانی اوست. مطلب آخر هم این که اخیراً رئیس جمهور آمریکا زبان به تهدید گشوده، ما رو تهدید میکنه. هم تهدید میکنه، هم با یک بیان سخیف و غیر قابل قبولی از ملت ایران صریحاً میخواد که بیایید تسلیم من بشید. وقتی انسان این چیزها رو مشاهده میکنه واقعا تعجب میکنه. اولا تهدید رو به کسی بکنن که از تهدید اونها میترسه. ملت ایران نشان داده که در مقابل تهدید کنندگان دچار ترس نمیشه و لا تهینوا و لا تحزنوا و انتم الاعلون ان کنتم مؤمنین. این رو بهش ملت ایران معتقده. تهدید تأثیر نمیگذاره در رفتار ملت ایران، در اندیشه ملت ایران. ثانیاً اینی که به ملت ایران میگن تسلیم بشید حرف عاقلانه ای نیست. افراد با خرد که میشناسن ایران رو، میشناسن ملت ایران رو، میشناسن تاریخ ایران رو، هرگز چنین حرفی رو بر زبان جاری نمیکنن. تسلیم چی بشن؟ ملت ایران تسلیم شدنی نیست. ما تعرض به کسی نکردیم و به هیچ وجه تعرض احدی رو هم قبول نمی‌کنیم و تسلیم تعرض هیچ کس نمی‌شیم. منطق ملت ایرانه، این رویه ملت ایران. و البته آمریکایی‌ها، اونهایی که با سیاست‌های این منطقه آشنا هستن میدانند که ورود آمریکا در این قضیه 100% به ضرر اونچه که او در این زمینه ضربه خواهد خورد به مراتب بیشتر است.
You know, if we entered the situation, the damage we would suffer. So they most definitely, you know, said if we were to attack them, that they would basically get revenge, guys. You just seen it go across the screen.
همین آیه شریفه رو همیشه در نظر داشته باشید. زندگی به حمدالله به طور عادی در جریانه. نگذارید دشمن احساس کنه که شما در مقابل او میترسید، احساس ضعف میکنید. اگر دشمن احساس کنه که شما از او میترسید، دیگه شما رو گریبان شما رو راه نخواهد کرد. همین رفتاری که دارید رفتار رو با قوت ادامه بدید. کسانی که امور خدماتی به عهده‌شون هست، کسانی که با مردم سر و کار دارن، کسانی که امور تبلیغاتی و تبیینی بر عهده‌شون هست، کار خودشون رو با قوت انجام بدن و ادامه بدن و به خدای متعال توکل کنن و من نصر الله من عند الله العزیز الحکیم و خدای متعال ملت ایران رو حقیقت رو و حق رو به طور قطع و یقین پیروز خواهد کرد انشاءالله. و اولی که مایلم.
Yeah, so basically, you know, that's the supreme ruler of Iran, basically speaking beforehand, if we was to get involved and basically try to interfere in what they got going on with Israel, that the United States, you know, would basically, they will retaliate against us. No cap. It's crazy, y'all. Let's continue where we was at.
They are in such a weakened position because of the conflict over the past year or more. Does that had to have factored in to the calculation tonight? Do you think President Trump is being overconfident if he thinks this is one and done?
Did they? And that's the only
I think President Trump actually has unique and powerful credibility on this issue. He noted the strike on Qasem Soleimani, which I really believe was the correct action at the time. I was responsible for carrying out his orders on that strike.
Yes, they do. Israel said that they have the technology basically to get with us. They have missiles capable of making it to London, and once they most definitely get them over there, they can most definitely get them to the United States. So don't be thinking that they can't. We most definitely watched the video just a second ago where Israel was talking about the technology that Iran has, and that's when they was urging Trump to get involved with this, you know, because after it happens to them, it had the potential to happen to us.
Right, and really began the arc of the trajectory that has taken us to this point. Where Iran is on their back foot and in a very grave danger of even surviving as a state. So I think that
Roxy, how about your mama sound ignorant? Let's get Roxy right up out of here. I'm just telling you what the news said. Tell the news they sound ignorant. You just got deported. I deport people faster than Trump and got more rockets than Elon Musk. Let's get you where you go. Right up out my chat while you talking about your mama sound ignorant. How would you talk about your mama like that? Wow. We'll holler at you. Bye. We don't care. We'll see you later. You telling me I sound ignorant by telling you what the news said. That's what the news said. What you mad at me for? Or I might have deported the wrong person. Hold on. Let's get the right person. Moderators, where y'all at? You know what I'm saying? We got somebody in here that's ready to get deported. I just deported the wrong person. Undeport them and deport the right person. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, let's get her right up out of here. You know, because she chose to come in here and talk about her mama sound ignorant. Well, I'm just telling you what the news said. You should be telling them they sound ignorant. You know what I'm saying? How about that?
That's something to understand as we take a look at it. I think we should remember that the primary goal of Iranian statecraft is preservation of the regime. At different times before, this regime has chosen to step back when faced with the possibility of regime destruction. I think they're rapidly approaching that point right now, and I think this measurably moves us forward to that end.
We have learned here at CBS that there was some advance notice that was on past to Iran about these strikes. But as I said, there wasn't full diplomatic notice being given to all of the allies in the region. You ran that operation in 2020 when, as you mentioned, Qasem Soleimani was taken off the battlefield. How much visibility does the United States have for what comes next? How good is our intelligence in terms of the threat picture?
So, Margaret, our intelligence is very good. Penetration of Iran by human sources and other sources is very good. We're going to have a good feel for what the Iranians are thinking. The other factor that's out there is much Iranian leadership is dead now. And the Iranians have, because of their corrupt system of promoting officers and keeping them in place, they don't have a good succession plan inside their military. So people go into a job and they say 10, 12, 15 years while they're growing rich from that job. So those people are not dead, but they haven't groomed a successor. So that makes it very hard for the supreme leader to formulate decisions and to transmit those decisions to the Iranian military. And that will further complicate Iranian responses, I believe, in the days and weeks ahead.
Thank you, General. And just to clarify for our audience, as we were talking about the killings of top Iranian officials, many of them have been military leaders. We were showing you a picture there of the supreme leader, we were talking about Qasem Soleimani. We were talking about the supreme leader just now, showing you a picture of him. We do not know his whereabouts at this hour. He has actually not been seen in public for a few days now. He had this video address that we are showing you. But he is at 86 years old, dealing with cancer, and all of our reporting is that he has been very hard to contact. In other words, the top levels of Iranian government aren't sure where their boss is. At this hour, we do not know his whereabouts. When we're talking about succession planning, that is the man, that is the main decision maker from which all things flow. And so this question of what comes next is going to be really important to think about as we look at who else may be able to give orders or not give orders. We want to speak to Samantha Vinograd, who I'm told is joining us as well right now, a national security contributor to CBS. She also joins us on the phone. She was a former assistant secretary for counterterrorism at Homeland Security. And Sam, I know you served before that on the National Security Council as well. There has been so much reporting around the threat in the United States over the past few years, the risk to officials involved with actions against Iran, the risk of sleeper cells here in the United States. When we talk about retaliation, should we be thinking about the homeland?
Margaret, I am deeply concerned about the potential for retaliatory attacks here in the homeland by Iran. Iran's nuclear program has certainly taken a hit. We will await the battleground assessment to understand how deep that hit was. But we do know that Iran is likely going to rely on its asymmetric advantage.
Can we get 600 on that likes, guys? Click those three dots, hit that thumbs up. Most definitely subscribe to the channel if you
had both intent and the ability to direct and inspire individuals to attack American, Israeli, and Jewish interests and assets all around the world. During my time at Homeland Security, we tracked myriad Iranian threats here in the homeland, as you mentioned, against former government officials involved in the strike, against Qasem Soleimani, against dissidents, against journalists, against the Saudi ambassador during the Obama administration,
we need 25 more likes,
American.
guys.
So right now, while Iran
click those three dots, hit that thumbs up. It helps out the channel.
It is likely that they will rely on their asymmetric advantage in this context, which is their proxies, to try to send a signal to the United States and to the rest of the world that they just aren't going to take this hit without any kind of response. Now, how significant their reprisals will be is something the intelligence and law enforcement communities are likely looking into, but I am concerned about the threat here in the homeland.
Yeah, I'm looking at an email now from our Homeland Security correspondent, Nicole Skenga, detailing some of the law enforcement officials throughout the country who say they have not yet been given any kind of briefing in regard to possible downstream effects. But as you point out, that doesn't mean there isn't one. In fact, I was speaking to a U.S. official earlier today who said that this administration has shown a higher risk tolerance when it comes to things like this than past administrations. That was in reference to the security of Americans abroad. As we noted there, Sam, it was just earlier today that the U.S. ambassador to Israel announced the details of how to leave Israel right now with U.S. government chartered flights. Is that a little late in the game? If you have an American family member in the region right now, how worried should you be?
Well, Margaret, on your first point, law enforcement and intelligence professionals were already on heightened alert as it pertains to the Iranian threat, just based upon the strikes against Qasem Soleimani and just various Iranian threat streams that were around even when I was at DHS ending in 2023. So while they should get a briefing on downstream effects, they are already very aware of Iranian capabilities in this context and likely monitoring social media, encrypted platforms, and other sources to see if they can find any leads on specific threat streams following these military strikes. Now, I will tell you that we have had operational plans to evacuate Americans from the region for years, and certainly post-October 7th. Those operational plans were ready to go, and I was very surprised that they were not implemented sooner based upon Israel's strikes against Iran and what we knew to be potential strikes against Americans in the region. As soon as President Trump took the decision to launch these strikes, I would have expected him and his National Security Council to immediately begin to actively evacuate Americans, not just from Israel, but potentially from Lebanon, from Egypt, from Iraq. Iran is obviously more complicated. Just knowing that Iran will be looking for opportunities to harm Americans, whether that's through violence, through kidnapping, through harassment,
I don't even know what to say, y'all. All I can do is look in disbelief like, man, this is really going
the
on.
State Department deciding to implement those plans, the Department of Defense helping to operate
10 more
them.
likes to
And I
600,
think
guys.
that it is
10 more
unfortunately too little too late
Continue to
based
double
upon the
tap that
calls that
screen
have been
or
raised
click
for
those
the
3 dots, hit that thumbs up.
Right. Well, those are some cautionary words at this hour, Sam. We know that Americans were ordered out of U.S. mission Iraq a few days ago, but when it came to some of those other posts, there are still plenty of Americans working, living, and many of them with families as well. We're going to continue to track what's happening there in the region, and I want to go now to the White House, where we find White House correspondent Weijia Jiang. Weijia, I know from the rundown here, we saw the Secretary of Defense, the Secretary of State, a number of key advisors, including the CIA director. And there has been a very public back and forth that the president has had disputing publicly the findings of the intelligence community when it came to assessing whether or not Iran was actually making a weapon, or whether it was, as the U.S. intelligence community said, wanting to be a threshold state. In other words, give themselves the option to get a weapon, but not actually building one. All of it comes back to that question of why this military action last Thursday and why this action now.
And Margaret, we've been really trying to drill down on that very question during this past week because President Trump gave a very specific timeline. He said that Iran was just weeks away from having a nuclear weapon. And so I asked during the last White House press briefing, Caroline Leavitt, what he meant by that. Did he mean that Iran was getting close to having enough enriched uranium, which is required to build that weapon, to start making
Shout out to B-Way for being a member for the last
Iran
7 months.
just weeks away from actually finishing the production of a weapon? And she said that it would only take 2 weeks if the supreme leader gave the green light for Iran to have that weapon. And as you pointed out, that contradicts what we have heard from the IAEA, which of course monitors all the nuclear sites around the world, which recently said that Iran was not actively pursuing a nuclear bomb, and also flies in the face of what the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, testified. Now, she did talk about those high levels of enriched uranium. That is very different from saying they actually are close to a bomb. But that is what the president said. That is what this administration said. And so we will be asking for more details because that is so important to answer the why of why now, Margaret.
Yes, and an important question many lawmakers will be raising as well. We know that Lawmakers have not been briefed. They are scheduled to be briefed in the House and Senate on Tuesday by the Director of National Intelligence, along with military leaders, on exactly how all of this came about and the justification for it. We know as of this evening that the top leadership in Congress hasn't fully been briefed, or at least the Democrats who are in that so-called gang of eight,
Democrats
those who
are upset, guys.
lead the parties in both houses and then also have oversight of the intelligence committees. The Republicans have told CBS that they have been briefed. The Democrats have not. That further,
wow,
of
he
course,
didn't even
will
tell the
raise
Democrats,
questions
guys,
about any
and
kind
they
of
are
politics
upset
here on such a significant issue of national security.
So Trump made this power move, guys, to basically get involved with Iran and Israel. He told the Republicans, but he did not tell the Democrats, y'all. And the Democrats are upset and said that Trump should have put the people first. Hold on, check this one out. Let me go to this next one, y'all. Oh man, this is crazy. So now they in an uproar about that. Check this out.
Breaking news coverage, President Trump announcing tonight that Iran's key nuclear facilities were, quote, totally obliterated by the U.S. Air Force. A Saudi nuclear regulator says no radioactive traces have been detected in the kingdom or Arab Gulf states as a result.
No. Man, this is crazy, y'all. I can't believe this is going on. But we just got word, from what we just watched, that Trump notified the Republicans about what was going on and didn't tell the Democrats nothing. And now the Democrats are upset.
Of U.S. strikes on Iran's nuclear facilities. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer just sent out this statement saying, quote, President Trump must provide the American people and Congress clear answers on the actions taken tonight and their implications for the safety of Americans. No president should be allowed to unilaterally march this nation into something as consequential as war with erratic threats and no strategy. We must enforce the War Powers Act, and I'm urging Leader Thune to put it on the Senate floor immediately. I'm voting for it and implore all senators on both sides of the aisle to vote for it. With me now is Congressman Adam Smith, a Democrat from Washington and the ranking member of the Armed Services Committee. Congressman, it's great to see you again. Let me just ask you, Did you have any indication, any insight as to whether or not this was happening tonight when the president was returning to the White House for this national security meeting?
Not directly. They didn't say that. But
how you just make a major move like that and not tell the Democrats? Even if they wasn't going to be with it, they still supposed to know. Everybody is supposed to know. Why didn't they know?
Only from what President Trump has said, the repositioning of the B-2 bombers and other forces, and just his general vibe the last several days, it was not surprising. But no, there was no heads up that I'm aware of given to any congressional leaders.
I read your statement that you posted, which I think there are a lot of very important parts to it, and I wanted to kind of just go, through it with you a little bit. One of the points that you made, which I have not yet heard this evening from any American officials, and certainly as I read some statements from American officials, members of Congress, questioning the legality of this strike. You went a step further. You said the president failed to provide clear objectives for these actions, and there are no guarantees that it will eliminate the possibility of Iran developing a nuclear weapon or how long it might set their program back. Elaborate on that and why you thought that was important to include tonight.
Sure, several pieces to this. I mean, first of all, obviously there are other issues with Iran than just their nuclear program. They are sponsoring a variety of different terrorist groups throughout the region, destabilizing governments. They have a ballistic missile program that is a threat. But on the nuclear program, the only thing that stopped the Iranian nuclear program was the JCPOA that President Obama negotiated. Everyone agrees that Iran was abiding by that, and they had stopped enriching uranium, and they had stopped moving towards developing a bomb. And then, of course, President Trump tore up the agreement, and Iran went back to enriching uranium and moving towards the bomb. Now, the military estimations, can you stop this? Can you drop a bunch of bombs and blow up all the centrifuges that we know about? We don't know that. Now, President Trump, in his typical fashion, claims facts not in evidence, saying we totally obliterated their whole program. Nobody knows that right now. Maybe, maybe not. We do not know how many of these centrifuges were destroyed. So that's number one. Number two, we can't be 100% sure that we knew about all of Iran's centrifuges. We didn't know about Fordo for about a decade before we discovered it. And number three, no one has talked about, well, how quickly could Iran reconstitute all of this? It sadly does not take that long to build centrifuges once you know how. So it's not necessarily the death blow to Iran's nuclear program. We're still going to have to negotiate with them at some point. So, this assumption that their nuclear program is gone, they'll never be able to build it, is simply wrong at this point.
You used the word condemn in the strongest terms the president's decision. Again, I think very powerful words tonight. And you also said that the path the president has chosen risks unleashing a wider war in the region that is both incredibly unpredictable and treacherous, and that threatens the safety and the security of the United States, Israel, and ultimately the world. I get a sense, sir, and please correct me if I'm wrong.
So to my chat, is this a good thing or a bad thing, guys? I'm in the middle. I don't know what to think. I'm like, man, oh man, especially when we just watched that video of the supreme Iranian leader saying that if the U.S. got involved, that there would be consequences and they would retaliate. Oh my God.
Based on that language, you're extremely disappointed with what the president has done tonight.
Well, disappointed would be the wrong word, because disappointed implies expectations. But I think it was wrong. I think it was a mistake. And the point is, we have forces throughout the region, in Qatar, in Bahrain, in Iraq, in the UAE. I was just there, as it happens, 2 months ago, in all of those countries and visited our forces. And they are all very vulnerable to Iranian attack. Now, we'll see. I mean, the future is notoriously hard to predict. Who knows for sure what Iran is going to do? But I'd sure be surprised
if Iran simply capitulated at this
press conference. And if they attack, all of those forces are in jeopardy. Now, we have force protection methods in place. They're not perfect. They're not necessarily going to protect all of our forces. And if Iran does that, then what does the president do in response? Does he just let that go? That seems unlikely. Look, this is the same thing back in Iraq. Saddam Hussein was a terrible guy. We didn't know whether or not Saddam Hussein was working towards a nuclear weapon back then because he wasn't being transparent about it. And you can imagine a world of, gosh, if we just remove this guy, how much better would things be? Sure, but you don't know what comes next. And that's the lesson we learned. President Trump has not said anything yet about whether or not regime change is part of his objective. If it is, that's incredibly problematic. If it isn't, he should state clearly that it isn't. The best we can hope for now is that Iran does feel, backed into a corner is the wrong word. Iran decides to capitulate, and they come out and they negotiate in good faith, and we get to a peaceful resolution. But that is a huge roll of the dice. And then, of course, there is the constitutional issue that the president had no authority to start a war with Iran, which, make no mistake about it, that's what he did. Where that war goes, hard to say, but he started a war with Iran tonight.
And what do you think is Israel's responsibility in getting the U.S. into this moment? I mean, the president is certainly, by some assessment, and again, you use very strong language against the president of the United States. What responsibility does Israel have for starting this war 9 days ago, knowing ultimately that America was always going to come to Israel's defense at some point and perhaps even get involved in this war on behalf of Israel? I mean, it's safe to say the United States would not have been doing this tonight if Israel had not started this unprovoked war 9 days ago.
Yeah, sorry, that last sentence I got to get back to in just a second. But I'm a big personal responsibility person. This isn't Israel's fault. It's not Israel's fault that Donald Trump decided to bomb. Yeah, they wanted him to, but he's the president of the United States. He doesn't have to do what Israel tells him to do. So let's not make any mistake about that. Second, Iran has definitely been provoking Israel. Iran, from its founding, has had it as one of its central tenets that Israel doesn't have a right to exist, which is, pretty much an unprecedented foreign policy, except for Russia now in Ukraine. Iran has supported Hezbollah, Hamas, the Houthis, and various other groups that have directly attacked Israel. So that Israel had a reason to attack Iran, I will not question. The U.S., doesn't. And the U.S., as I mentioned, has forces in the region and they are at risk. There is no question that Prime Minister Netanyahu and Israel put a ton of pressure on Donald Trump to do this.
Okay.
He didn't have to.
Say loose
he could have put our interests. Sorry, I'm just going to go ahead and say it. He could have put America first. But it doesn't seem like that's the.
Do y'all feel like Trump didn't put us first, guys? This guy says Trump should have put America first. He don't feel like he did. What y'all think about that?
Decision that he made, and the consequences of it going forward are, as I have said, very unpredictable and certainly dangerous for U.S. interests.
I'm sure you've seen, certainly within the MAGA world and within the Republican Party, some who agree with you that this is not a war that America should have gotten into. It is not an America First policy. Tom Massey called the strikes tonight unconstitutional. What should the Democrats be doing right now? I mean, the fact that these questions, this criticism was coming out from the Tucker Carlsons of the world and the Steve Bannons of the world, and not from some of the senior leaders of the Democratic Party before tonight. We're seeing it a little bit tonight, but not before tonight. Where does it go from here?
Sorry, I've been saying don't do this, don't do this, don't do this for the last 2 or 3 weeks. I don't know what other leaders have been saying that, but the statement I put out tonight is perfectly consistent with everything I've been saying since this started.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I think the really important point here is, where does U.S. national security and foreign policy go? And the thing that I kind of agree with is that we need to get off of this sort of end of the Cold War thinking that we can just move the pieces of the world around like they're our chessboard, that we're the world's sole remaining superpower, right? So whatever we want to do, we can fix and move and do. We became too overly ambitious in our ability to do that after the first Gulf War.
Why are we over there?
Consequences in Iraq and in Afghanistan.
What's up, Willie Mills?
We need to rethink the world and look at it as a multipolar world, not a world that we are in a position to dominate and reshape to our desire. That belief system got us into a ton of trouble.
That was a stupid move.
All right, and I personally, 20 some odd years ago, I struggled with that myself. I don't think I made all the right decisions about how to do that. Now that we've learned that we shouldn't do that,
okay, all right, Kimberly.
Man, make sure you subscribe that our military might is going to reshape the world, bend it to our will. So not only is this a problem in Iran, but it is a problem with this broader militaristic philosophy that somehow we're going to build a strong enough military that we can just go break whatever we want to break and reshape it to our interests. That's just not the world I think that we live in. And I think having that belief system is dangerous beyond Iran in terms of how we choose to employ national security and foreign policy and use our military going forward. I think it's got to be more about partnerships and alliances, understanding we are not going to dominate. We got to figure out how to peacefully coexist with people in this world. This takes us in the exact opposite direction, and that was one of the cornerstones of the Trump argument. Vote for me because I'm going to get us out of that business. Right. This makes it very clear that, once again, he was lying to us about what he was going to do.
All right, hold on, because I just got word, that basically Iran says that they will most definitely retaliate, like I told y'all. And the question is, how will they retaliate? And they basically said that all options are on the table. Hold on, take a look at this one. Hold on, let's shift over and see what they talking about. They say all options are on the table. That's what Iran said. Let's go.
To some of the Republican reaction in just a moment here. We do have more analysis, more context coming in, including from our friend there at the FDD, Joe Trusman. He joins me. Joe, thanks for hopping on. I know it's extremely late where you are, but this is a momentous, historic occasion, and we got to get to it. Your initial reaction, you and I were talking earlier this week about the kind of what ifs, the hypotheticals, if this were to take place, it has now taken place here. What are you hearing?
Right, historic moment for sure. Nevertheless, it happened a little sooner than I thought it would, but it happened. But now, more than anything, my concern is Iran's reaction and how it will respond. But of course, not only how Iran will respond, and I think we talked about this last time you and I spoke, but their proxies, their network of clients in the region, they've been mostly quiet since the Israel-Iran conflict started about 8-9 days ago now. So we need to see or need to observe.
Continue to double tap that screen, guys. Get those likes up.
I'm curious to know what's going to happen on that front, right?
They trying to figure out what will Iran do as retaliation for what America just did today, dog. You know what I'm saying? That is the question. Shout out to Significance of Time. Says hold up. Laughing my butt off. Iran got diddled. Con Air freed Palestine. Okay, bet.
You have Iraqi militia groups. You have Hezbollah in Lebanon, the Houthis in Yemen, of course, and there are other groups. So there's a few of them in the region. Some battered more than others. We know that, but still potent. And it caused a lot of problems, not only for Israel, of course, but U.S. bases in the region. And of course, American allies in the region too. So now we're just in a wait and see mode, see what happens.
Yeah, and I think anyone saying they know it's going to happen does not know what's going to happen here. But as far as U.S. involvement is concerned, is that it, do you think, or will there be more?
I think a lot depends on Iran's response. That's what I think hinges.
What do y'all think they'll do, guys?
Over the last,
do y'all
think they
will try to come drop some missiles on America,
messaging,
guys? What will they do to
reports
retaliate?
actually that just say that show that the United States is moving a lot of assets into the region. All right, the amount of military assets that were moved by the United States into the region is not needed for the bombing that occurred tonight. I think what's happening there is the United States is prepared for a response. All right, they want to have the assets in place in case they have to go back into Iran or perhaps into other countries, maybe Iraq, for example, if Iraqi militias begin to attack U.S. bases. So they want to have those assets there just in case. Hopefully, they don't have to use them, of course, right? But you know, these militias, these groups, Iran and others, they have said they're going to respond if the U.S. intervened in the war, and the U.S. did. So now it's their turn.
Yeah, you know, the kind of fundamental thinking after Israel took out Ismail Haniyeh, the leader of Hamas, in Tehran last summer, and kind of the blunt force reaction, Iran retaliated against Israel 2 times last year.
He said they might lock us down. Ain't no telling, man. You know what I'm saying? This is most definitely scary, guys. I ain't gonna lie to y'all.
Many had characterized Iran as a paper tiger, that it's all bark, no bite. And you've even heard that over the last week as kind of the number of missiles they've launched into Israel has dwindled here. So is it safe to say that they won't retaliate based on the threats President Trump is giving and offering the saber-rattling from the White House? That any retaliation by Iran will be met with this amount of force, if not stronger force than what we just...
Sleepy Rob, don't never underestimate your opponent. You know what I'm saying? While you laughing, thinking it's a game, man, you don't know what these people capable of. They already said that they had nuclear technology over there. Come on now.
So is Iran in this now weakened posture, weakened state? Should they crawl into a hole?
Exactly.
I think they are in a weakened state, for sure. I think the Israelis did a lot of damage over the last...
Shout out to Significance of Time for that 5-piece. Say, I hear Iranian do-rag pros feel on Amazon, 1 bomb at a time. All right, bet.
8-9 days against their military infrastructure, of course, their nuclear sites. But I don't think we have seen the worst out of the Iranians, all right?
Let's talk about
this includes their proxies and clients. So I think the biggest problem, at least for the Israelis, for example, is the missile interceptors they've been using, they've had to use up over the last 8-9 days now. Let's say Iran decides, with their remaining missile launchers, they decide to begin launching barrages against Israel that lasts days and days and days. Israelis will eventually lose interceptors, will run out of interceptors. And that's a big problem. What if the proxies join in? Then there's more missiles coming. How does Israel defend their skies without interceptors? So there could be a lot of damage that could be caused here if this war drags on. Of course, you have the problem with the United States, too. They have military bases. They have allies in the region. They can be attacked, too. So I understand the paper tiger. Some people calling it Iran a paper tiger, but I'm more conservative. I think there's a lot more that they can do. They have tricks up their sleeves, essentially. And they're also known for acts of terrorism, too. They don't have to retaliate only via missiles or only via drones. They have supported proxies that have carried out acts of terrorism against soft targets, against embassies, against Jewish targets, Israeli targets, American targets, obviously. So that's another big concern of mine, is terrorism.
No, mine too, and I was going to ask you that. And I don't want to be alarmist by any means. I don't want to be hyperbolic here, but I think, I speak for a lot of viewers right now. This is, a scary moment in world history.
Very scary. Let's talk
just don't know. It's very uncertain. But if someone has in the back of their mind right now, if they're watching, the thought that, Iran will do something on U.S. soil in the homeland, are they right to think that? Are they right to be concerned about that?
I think they have a right to be concerned, because the problem is Iran has demonstrated that they're willing to do this, all right, or its proxies have the capability to do this. That's the problem here in the homeland, here in the United States, and that does concern me. Can I give you a percentage if that's going to happen? I can't, but. Iran has many tools at its disposal. That's the issue here. Yeah. So that's one of the things, one of the possibilities that can happen. I'm not saying just here in the homeland, of course. There could be acts of terrorism in other countries as well, where they're American targets, or whether it's Israeli or Jewish targets. So again, that's a concern of mine. But it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to happen tomorrow or the next day. Listen, the Iranians and the Iranian government and their proxies.
Exactly. They got plenty of time. It might not happen tomorrow. It might not happen next week. It might be 3 months from now, 3 years. But basically, they saying they going to get their get back. Who gets punched in the face by someone who wasn't in the fight and just walks away? Let's talk about it, Baller.
Been known to play the long game. So they've waited months to carry out attacks or retaliations when it comes to employing acts of terrorism, like bombings, for example.
Right.
So there's so much to consider here. It's very difficult, but at least I think people should know that it just doesn't mean Iran can attack in different ways. It doesn't have to be just missiles and drones, what we usually see, the conventional means, what we usually see on television.
All right, Joe Truzen, we're going to leave it at that. I know it's so late, and we thank you so much for coming on and helping us make sense of what is an extremely complex conflict that is still fluid, still playing out. Joe, good to see you.
All right, thank you.
Okay, in the meantime here, so we're not going to do any commercial breaks this hour. We're going to get back, though, to Capitol Hill. I was kind of highlighting for you some of the reaction coming in from lawmakers. We were going through kind of a litany of Democratic messages. Let's focus our efforts.
Democrats are
now, though,
upset,
coming from Republicans here, including Marjorie Taylor Greene, the Republican of Georgia. I want to put this up here. She says this, that every time America is on the verge of greatness, we get involved in another foreign war, she says. There would not be bombs falling on the people of Israel if Netanyahu had not dropped bombs on the people of Iran first, she says. Israel is a nuclear-armed nation. This is not our fight. Peace is the answer. She also says, let us join together and pray for the safety of our U.S. troops and Americans in the Middle East. She says, let us pray that we are not attacked by terrorists on our homeland after our border was open. For the past 4 years, and over 2 million gotaways came in. She says, let us pray for peace. So Marjorie Taylor Greene, somewhat of a kind of now vociferous critic of this action, alongside some of her Republican colleagues in the House like Thomas Massey, who called this unconstitutional on X, who also signed on to an effort on the House side who also authorized these strikes via congressional
Rose said, ain't not fighting. A lot of people feel like that, man. Why is we in this and we ain't got nothing
gains any traction? Majority Leader John Thune in the Senate says this, The regime in Iran, which has committed itself to bringing death to America and wiping Israel off the map, has rejected all diplomatic pathways to peace. The mullah's misguided pursuit of nuclear weapons must be stopped. As we take action tonight to ensure a nuclear weapon remains out of reach for Iran, I stand with President Trump and pray for the American troops and personnel in harm's way. You see him there. All right, we also have House Speaker Mike Johnson. He says this, and this is a long statement, bear with me, that the military operations in Iran should serve as a clear reminder to our adversaries and allies that President Trump means what he says. He says the president gave Iran's leader every opportunity to make a deal, but Iran refused to commit to a nuclear disarmament agreement. President Trump has been consistent and clear that a nuclear-armed Iran will not be tolerated. That posture has now been enforced with strength, precision, and clarity. He says the president's decisive action prevents the world's largest state sponsor of terrorism, which chants death to America, from obtaining the most lethal weapon on the planet. This is America First policy in action. He says, God bless our brave men and women in uniform, the most lethal fighting force on the planet, as we pray for their safe return home. May God bless America. Johnson goes on to say this, that the president made the right call and did what he needed to do.
Well, there's some
Leaders in
people that
Congress
feel
were
like
aware
Trump
of the
did the
urgency
right
of the
thing.
situation, and the commander-in-chief evaluated that the imminent danger outweighed the time it would take for Congress to act. The world's largest state sponsor of terrorism, which chants death to America, simply could not be allowed the opportunity to obtain and use nuclear weapons. The president fully respects the Article I power of Congress, and tonight's necessary, limited, and targeted strike follows the history and tradition of similar military actions under presidents of both parties. So you see there, Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, let's go back to Capitol Hill. He's kind of trying to get ahead of this question on whether or not Congress should have authorized this strike via a...
Now, while Americans are torn whether Trump did the right thing, Israel is celebrating and basically patting Trump on the back, saying, good job, y'all. Check this one out. Hold up. Continue to get those likes up. They stuck. Let's get the likes up, guys. Click those 3 dots. Hit that thumbs up. Most definitely subscribe to the channel if you are new, guys. Let's see what Israel had to say about all
and foreign minister in an interview with our colleague Andrea Mitchell
let me bring in my colleague Vaughn Hilliard, who's at the White House for us. Vaughn, what can you fill in for us about how the day unfolded?
Nicole, there's a lot of unanswered questions. It was just 24 hours ago that I was on a tarmac in New Jersey outside of his Bedminster Golf Club when I asked the president very explicitly whether the U.S. had intelligence that Iran was actively building a nuclear weapon. And he told me that his intelligence community and Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, who notably you did not see standing behind him there at the White House delivering these remarks, that their assessments that Iran was not building a nuclear weapon, that at least the U.S. had no intelligence of that, was, quote, wrong. I asked him whether he believed that Israel would be able to take out these nuclear facilities on its own, like Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu repeated 2 different times over the last 48 hours, and he undercut that assessment from the Israeli Prime Minister, suggesting that the U.S. was the only one that had the capacity to effectively, especially in the case of Fordo, which has this underground nuclear facility a half a mile under the ground, be able to adequately drop a bomb that would be able to take out this nuclear facility. And while he opened the door to this idea of 2 weeks, he never said that he was going to give 2 weeks to Iran to come back to the negotiating table over a potential nuclear agreement, notably one that he and his first administration pulled out back in 2018. But here today, in striking fashion, deciding to use the U.S. military in an offensive fashion within Iran, despite just 24 hours ago, again, the Iranian foreign minister, in an interview with our colleague Andrea Mitchell, making it clear that Iran was still interested in negotiating a potential deal where they would be able to enrich a certain level of uranium. Clearly, the president, after 2 months of negotiations, dismissing those overtures and deciding to move forward with these airstrikes, Nicole.
Vaughn, let me ask you if you have any reporting that explains what he is referring to when the president says if peace doesn't come quickly, then? I mean, he seems to be threatening further American involvement in attacks on Iran, or is that something the White House might describe as, I don't know, deal-making? Do we know what the further threat is to Iran?
The president has said that boots on the ground would be a last resort, that is not his plan. He noted tonight that there are no exact plans of further aggression inside of Iran.
Can we get 30 more people to double tap that screen or click those 3 dots, hit that thumbs up, y'all? Let's get the likes to 700. Most definitely subscribe to the channel if you're new. This is everything we know about Trump basically dropping bombs on Iran, destroying 3 of their top nuclear sites. And basically what Iran plans to do to retaliate.
Iran, that these were the end of the initial airstrikes. It's now up to Iran to come to, again, a nuclear negotiating table here. But for the president here, I think that this is worth noting that we've had a conversation over this idea of a 2-week timeline, right? It was 3 weeks ago that he suggested there would be consequences for Russia if it didn't agree to a ceasefire agreement or a peace deal with Ukraine. And that deadline came and went. Of course, the president in his first administration threatened to strike and blow up North Korea. He has threatened repeatedly to strike and blow up Iran. And this here, I think, is notable because these are the most significant offensive strikes we have seen the president move forward with since he killed Iranian military general Soleimani back in 2020. I think it's important for folks to remember in retaliation, which Iran has threatened to do this time around, Iran launched air strikes at a U.S. air base in Iraq, and more than 100 service personnel ultimately walked away with traumatic brain injuries. And there is still that looming threat here of how Iran is going to potentially retaliate against the U.S. The president making clear that they should not, and that he is prepared and equipped to use the U.S. military again to further activate troops in an offensive manner within Iran.
Vaughn, stick around for us. I want to bring into our coverage NBC News foreign correspondent Matt Bradley. We heard from Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu before. We heard from Donald Trump. What did he have to say?
Yeah, well, Nicole, I mean, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu couldn't have been more pleased with President Trump. His very brief remarks in English were filled with superlatives and just in a palpable sense of joy at what President Trump had done. And it was actually extraordinary to see just how grateful Prime Minister Netanyahu was in such a public way. He said, America has been truly surpassed. It has done what no other country on earth could do. He said that President Trump in the United States acted with a lot of strength. He said, President Trump, I thank you. The people of Israel, thank you. The forces of civilization, thank you. And then he did God bless America, God bless Israel.
We need 14 more likes, guys. Click those 3 dots, hit that thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. I keep saying hit that like button because it most definitely helps out the channel. I haven't asked you for $1. All I ask you to do is hit that like button. Shout out to everybody in the building.
Very much just a totally dedicated speech to praising the president. And this is very interesting because remember, Nicole, just a couple of months ago, it looked as though President Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu were kind of on the outs. President Trump was negotiating with Iran, something that Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu has constantly said he doesn't want to see negotiations with Iran. The president made a very high-profile visit to the Middle East and didn't visit Israel, America's top ally in the Middle East, one of its top allies in the world.
I hear you,
so
crazy adventures.
It looked as though the president and Netanyahu weren't going to be the best friends that everybody had imagined during the Biden years, when it looked as though Biden was very much falling out with Netanyahu. Now, President Trump seems to have sort of tethered himself, not just to Netanyahu, but to his adventures throughout the entire Middle East. And that could become very, very dangerous. You know, President Trump did mention Qasem Soleimani in that speech. Qasem Soleimani was the head of the Quds Force, who President Trump had assassinated back in 2020. Much of the defense and security and intelligence establishment were telling President Trump that this is going to be a bad idea, that there's going to be blowback, that the Iranians will attack America. Well, they didn't really. There wasn't really that much blowback. A previous strike that the U.S. did against the regime of Bashar al-Assad in Syria back in 2017, under President Trump's direction, that also didn't have the same kind of blowback that a lot of people were worried about. It's quite likely that President Trump remembered all of those warnings and how they didn't come true. He may believe that he can stroll into the ring, make a few quick punches, and walk out a champ. And it's unclear whether or not that's going to happen, because Benjamin Netanyahu is going to be, on some level, held to the notion that if you break it, you break it, you buy it, basically. This is what happened to the U.S. in Iraq, the invasion and the toppling of the Saddam Hussein regime that caused so much instability, not just in Iraq, but in neighboring countries as well, for decades. Now you're going to be seeing something like this in Iran, as we hear the conversation here in Israel among the top-level politicians increasingly has shifted from destroying Iran's nuclear program to affecting regime change in Iran, which we, as Americans, know that is a very troubling concept of regime change. It's been very frustrating for previous U.S. presidents before President Trump. But with this mentality now, if President Trump believes that he can just walk away from this situation, that's quite possible.
Significance of time says Palestine was seemingly set free tonight. All right.
But we have to see what Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, whose very warm words for the president today must have cheered President Trump. We'll have to see what Netanyahu decides to do next.
Matt, did Prime Minister Netanyahu convey any surprise, or did it seem obvious and preordained that Donald Trump would do what he did tonight?
I would say it didn't look as though he was expressing surprise, but it came very, very quickly after the president's strikes. And I would say that Prime Minister Netanyahu's body language was, again, as I said, palpably almost excited. He almost seemed to be jumping up and down. It was that pleased. And again, Prime Minister Netanyahu has made a big point of telling the Israeli public that he and only he can extract or wring out concessions from Washington. He makes it very clear that through successive presidents and leaders in the United States, that Netanyahu is the man for getting the United States to do what Israel wants.
Wow.
He's made this very public, and a lot of Israelis that I talked to believe this. There was this expectation that the president would weigh in.
I guess Israel ain't in it alone.
Israel.
They got
driving down the highway the other day,
now.
I saw a bunch of big highway signs, big billboards saying, "Finish the job, Mr. President," with a big American flag and a picture of President Trump. This is something that people are putting on billboards. And it was very much a strong feeling that the president should weigh in to help Israel. And this is what we heard from Benjamin Netanyahu tonight. There was gratitude, there was excitement, there was a sense of relief for the prime minister, who definitely instigated this war with Iran and now could be held accountable if he doesn't succeed in his stated goals. But there was also this sense that the prime minister really did feel as though he might owe something to President Trump. You could tell that the gratitude was so deep. And again, this is something that's going to vindicate Netanyahu in front of the Israeli public, as he has been increasingly blamed for the failures of October 7th. Now, with this latest adventure into Iran, it looks as though Prime Minister Netanyahu can turn to the Israeli public and say, I have done what everybody said was a terrible idea for generations. The United States government has regularly been telling Netanyahu, who, by the way, has been pushing for destroying Iran's nuclear program since the early 1990s, the U.S. and other leaders have always been telling them, don't do it. Step away from the brink. Don't attack Iran. Well, Israel did, and over the past week, its military dominance in Iran has been unquestionable. It is almost, again, when you talk to Israeli officials, they're extremely...
Tommy say this is the beginning of WW3. I believe it, dog. I believe it.
And visibly pleased with how well this attack on Iran has done. It has a popularity rate here in Israel, according to a most recent poll, of over 80% among Jewish Israelis. So this was a very popular move, and bringing President Trump on board is going to carry huge rewards for Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. But President Trump and his followers are going to have to ask, and they're already asking, what are the rewards for the United States?
Yeah, what does the
incredible
United
reporting.
States get
Thank you
out
so
of all of
much.
this?
Stay close to
What's
the
up,
camera. We're grateful to get to talk to you tonight.
All right. So with that being said, guys, you know, Israel is praising President Trump. But I just got word, you know, that there are sirens going on, emergency messages are being sent out in Israel right now as Iran prepares to strike, even after being struck, guys. Check this one out. Hold on. Check this out. You know, they saying that the sirens are going off in Israel right now. You know, and the cell phones are getting messages and everything. Let's go. Check this out.
What happens here? There are sirens.
Trey Inks, they now have sirens in Tel Aviv. Trey, what are you hearing?
Yeah, Trace, right now air raid sirens are sounding across Tel Aviv amid incoming ballistic missile fire. We've not yet seen any of Israel's air defense systems active, but we're going to wait and see what happens here. There are sirens, according to the initial alerts, sounding across the entirety of central Israel, all the way from Haifa in the north to the Negev Desert in the south. We also understand at this moment, this alert has gone out to everyone in this part of the country, sending millions of people into bomb shelters. Many people trying to get underground. There are a few cars out on the road right now, but you remember we talked about those emergency orders that went into effect from Israel's Home Front Command just before.
Man, that sounds so scary, man. Them sirens are going off. That means there is an incoming attack. Missiles are in the air. Oh my goodness, y'all. Wow.
This missile attack took place. Again, we don't yet see any air defense systems that are active over the city at this moment, but we're certainly waiting to see how this develops. This is the initial Iranian response to the American strikes that took place overnight, targeting the country's nuclear facilities. There are also initial reports of air raid sirens sounding in Jordan as these missiles fly over that country toward Israel. And so, again, this is a very common occurrence over the past 9 days here, Trace, as these sirens will sound. They're interceptors. Yep. All right. And so we're going to get inside here. Stay with us, Trace. Get in.
Yeah,
all right, let's go. Move with me. We're with you. We're still with you, Trace.
Continue to get those likes up, guys.
So you saw at least one interceptor over the city, Trace, an indication that the air defense systems are active over Tel Aviv. And this is, like Aaron said, the initial response. And in the distance, we can hear two booms. And likely these are the interceptions that are taking place over the city. Trace.
The sirens, Trey, the fact that they have stopped, is it because they are intermittent? It's not consistent, or is it something else?
Generally, these sirens will go on for a period of time, and then they'll stop. The threat is not over, though, when the sirens end. That's very important to note. In the past, we have seen these sirens stop, and a few moments later, a loud explosion or a missile slipping past the air defense systems. These are the same sirens that sound when there's incoming rocket fire from Gaza or missile fire from Lebanon. What's different with these ballistic missiles, they have such a large payload that when they are actually striking the ground, the destruction goes for blocks. We've been to many of these locations, and we've seen the aftermath of these ballistic missile strikes from the Iranian regime. And so far, 24 people have been killed in Israel, civilians who have been targeted in these Iranian strikes. And so, again, this is likely just the initial wave of an Iranian response. They're trying to put up some sort of response to these strikes overnight, but certainly given the fact that so many of these launchers have been destroyed, these ballistic missile launchers by IDF strikes, it is unlikely that they're able to fire in waves like they did at the very beginning of this conflict between Israel and Iran. Trace.
Trey, stay safe, take cover. We'll bring you back on.
Wow, guys. So not only are the sirens going off, but people are receiving messages to their phones telling them to take cover. Hold on. Check this one out. It ain't over yet. It's still more to go. It's still more to go, guys. Wow, man, this is crazy. I don't know if to be scared, not scared, or what, but I know one thing. I hope they don't mess with us.
Back live on the ground, continuing our coverage of breaking news to our chief foreign correspondent, Trey Yingst. He's live in Tel Aviv in what is now early morning in Israel. Trey.
Yeah, Trace, good evening. The question about Iranian response won't really affect how the Israelis prepare, whether or not they target American bases in the region, whether or not they directly target Israel again with ballistic missiles, or if they wait and keep everyone in suspense. The bottom line is that Israel is going to wait and determine. Give me 1 second here because I hear some alerts. Just stay with me 1 second, Trace, and I'll tell you. Where? Okay, so, yep, there it is right now. Just stay with us, Trace. I'm going to throw on a vest here. The Iranians may be responding as we speak. What you heard there, and there are emergency alerts going off on cell phones across this country, it appears there are some incoming ballistic missiles. It may take them about 5 or even 10 minutes to get here, but when they do, you'll hear sirens sound across this city, and then ultimately they will make attempts to intercept them overhead. Trace?
Just very quickly, if you can, Trey, I know you probably have to get shelter, but if you can kind of explain to us the process when the sirens go off. A lot of people don't know when the sirens go off and you have missiles incoming, and if you have to go, then just go. But if you have incoming, what's the process for the people in Israel and Tel Aviv?
Yeah, it's interesting, Trace. We were just talking about the possibility of an Iranian response, and at that very moment, we got alerts on our phones that there are incoming ballistic missiles targeting Israel. So civilians in this country will get alerts to cell phones. They'll have anywhere from 5, possibly 10 minutes to get into shelters. And when the missiles get close overhead, the last warning, it is an air raid siren that sounds across the city. And then people have to get into shelters and wait until the all clear is given. Now, Israel has a variety of missile defense systems that they use to shoot down this incoming fire. They have the Arrow 2 and 3 system. They have David Sling. They have the Patriot missile defense system. And they also have the THAAD system. There are also some systems at sea. There's a lot of efforts on the ground here, both Israeli and American efforts to shoot down any sort of incoming fire. But the issue is that these are not perfect. And these oftentimes will lead to missiles slipping past the air defense systems and slamming into the ground below. And the Iranians recently have targeted things like hospitals and a hospital in the southern part of Israel. They targeted residential areas, the financial district in Tel Aviv, places where there are large gatherings of civilians. And that's why so many people are in shelters. It's why people are actually sleeping in shelters overnight. And again, the latest information that we have here, Trace, I'm just looking at this emergency alert on my phone. There is an incoming Iranian attack at this very moment. Sirens should start sounding any minute here in Tel Aviv as we wait to see what sort of attack the Iranians have in store. Trace.
Trey Yings, take shelter. Stay safe, my friend. Thank you. Great work as always out there. Click here.
All right, so we got more, guys. We got more Democrats in states responding to what Trump did today by attacking Iran, guys. Yeah, let's see what they got to say. Continue to get those likes up, man. We got Newsom, Pelosi, most definitely speaking out about what Trump has done.
Yep, there it is right now. Just stay with us, Trace.
I messed up. Give me a second. Hold up. Continue to get those likes up. Yeah, man. Let's go.
This. Now, in the meantime, speaking of, let's keep it here stateside. Remember, we were bringing you some of these messages coming from major cities around the country about what they are doing to ramp up security in their respective locales in New York, D.C., also in California there. Live picture over the New York City skyline. Remember, we were hearing from the NYPD today. This. And I think we have it there, the NYPD. So they're saying this. We're tracking the situation unfolding in Iran, that out of an abundance of caution, we're deploying additional resources to religious, cultural, and diplomatic sites across New York City and coordinating with our federal partners, saying we'll continue to monitor for any potential impact to New York City. Now that's the NYPD. Live picture there. Let's go across the country to Los Angeles. A live picture there at LAX. We're hearing from California Governor Gavin Newsom.
States are preparing
he's saying,
they hope
following
for the best,
the president's action in Iran, California's State Threat Assessment Center is actively monitoring for any potential...
Oh, Governor Newsom, man. No, he can't stand Trump. Y'all know he can't stand Trump.
...impacts there in California. And so you can see there, he goes on to say, while there are no specific or credible counter threats we are aware of at this time, he goes on to say, we urge everyone to stay vigilant and report anything that they may see. Also, we're hearing from Washington, D.C., Police Department there putting out this statement saying the Metropolitan Police Department is closely monitoring the events in Iran. We're actively coordinating with our local, state, and federal law enforcement partners to share information and monitor intelligence in order to help safeguard residents, businesses, and visitors in the District of Columbia, saying at this time there are no known threats to the district. However, MPD has maintained an increased presence at religious institutions across the city. They say we continue to urge the public to remain vigilant and help keep our community safe. They say if you see something, say something. So in the meantime there, that is from the DC Police Department coming in. So like I said, many of these metropolitan cities nationwide, they are on high alert, sending more security personnel and details to some of these cultural and religious sites in their cities, just as safekeeping, to be extra cautious as well. Now, in the meantime, though, wanted to focus our efforts right now on Capitol Hill to bring you so much of the reaction here. We want to put this up. This is a live picture there on Capitol Hill. And remember, I read out to you the statement from Hakeem Jeffries, the minority leader, the Democrat from New York in the House. He said this, that Donald Trump promised to bring peace to the Middle East, saying he's failed to deliver on that promise, saying the risk of war has now dramatically increased, and I pray for the safety of our troops in the region who have been put in harm's way. He says President Trump misled the country about his intentions, saying failed to seek congressional authorization for the use of military force, and risks American entanglement in a potentially disastrous war in the Middle East. He says, first, the Trump administration bears the heavy burden of explaining to the American people why this military action was undertaken. Second, Congress must be fully and immediately briefed in a classified setting. Third, Donald Trump shoulders complete and total responsibility for any adverse consequences that flow from this unilateral military action there. So, strong words from Hakeem Jeffries. Now remember, a senior White House official told Fox that the White House gave a courtesy heads up to congressional leadership. Though Politico is reporting that the full Gang of Eight was not briefed before the strike. Now remember, the Gang of Eight are congressional leaders, the Senate Majority Leader, the Senate Minority Leader, the House Speaker, and the House Minority Leader, and the chair and ranking members of the House and Senate Intelligence Committees. Nicholas Wu at Politico says Democrats were not briefed before the strike, according to a person familiar with the situation telling that to Nicholas Wu of Politico, though some were notified shortly before Trump's Truth Social post.
Man, some people are agreeing
also,
with Trump. Also,
we're hearing from the House Armed Services Committee Chairman Mike Rogers of Alabama. He says, quote, it would be a grave mistake to retaliate against our forces. We're also hearing from more Democrats, like former Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi, also current Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer. This is their tack, they're taking their response to some of these here. I want to put Schumer up for you. Andrew Desiderio posting it there from Punchbowl. Schumer says this, President Trump must provide the American people and Congress clear answers on the actions taken tonight and their implications for the safety of Americans. No president should be allowed to unilaterally march this nation into something as consequential as war with erratic threats and no strategy. He says confronting Iran's ruthless campaign of terror, nuclear ambitions, and regional aggression demands strength, resolve, and strategic clarity. The danger of wider, longer, and more devastating war has now dramatically increased. He says we must enforce the War Powers Act, and I'm urging Leader Thune to put it on the Senate floor immediately. I'm voting for it and implore all senators on both sides of the aisle to vote for it. So it looks like there's some type of effort afoot there, at least among Democratic senators led by Schumer, to somewhat retroactively vote on a war powers resolution in the Senate to kind of retroactively authorize this. You see there, former Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi saying, tonight the president ignored the Constitution by unilaterally engaging our military without congressional authorization. She says, I join my colleagues in demanding answers from the administration on this operation, which she says endangers American lives and risks further escalation.
Oh man, Nancy Pelosi said that Trump's move endangered American lives and risks further escalation, Lord.
I believe we also have a message coming from Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, the Democrat from New York. She says this: the president's disastrous decision to bomb Iran without authorization is a grave violation of the Constitution and congressional war powers. He has impulsively risked launching a war that may ensnare us for generations. She says it is absolutely and clearly grounds for impeachment.
Whoa, impeachment. They want Trump up out of there now. Say that this is grounds for impeachment, guys. What do y'all think about that?
So AOC going so far saying this is grounds for impeachment. So this is what we do here on Live Now. We give you all of the reaction from both sides of the aisle. We pull no punches here, neither fear nor favor. We show you what Democrats are saying.
All right, so that's what they were saying, right? You know, and you see right there, she's saying that this could be possibly grounds for impeachment, guys. You know, wow, man. Wow. I hate to hear him talking like that, man. You know, said it put American lives in danger. Lord, that includes me. I'm in America, you know. Wow, then they talking about they want to, that's grounds for impeachment of Trump. Now, we got to take a look over here, man, to my guy Bernie Sanders. You know, let's see how Bernie Sanders reacted when he heard that Trump had basically gave the okay for us to go over there and get at Iran, guys. This should be good. Bernie already shaking his head. Uh-oh.
This is a statement from Donald Trump, quote, "We have completed our very successful attack on the 3 nuclear sites in Iran," etc.
They talk that impeachment with every president. Let's go, Gigi. Y'all hear him booing Trump? They screaming no more WAR.
And I want to tell you something. Not only is this news that I've just heard this second alarming, that all of you have just heard, but it is so grossly unconstitutional. All of you know that the only entity that can take this country to war is the U.S. Congress. The president does not have the right . I was talking a moment ago about the fact that we are living in one of the most difficult moments in the modern history of this country, and Trump just made it that much more difficult. That's just another burden we're going to have to carry, and that's just another message we're going to have to get out all over this country. The American people do not want more war, more death. It might be a good idea if we concentrated on the problems that exist in Oklahoma and Vermont, rather than getting involved in another war that the American people do not want. Let me just say this. that in the midst of all of what is going on, what is enormously important is that we do not give up on a vision of where this country must go. What the establishment wants you to believe.
We 30 likes away from 800, guys.
No power,
do we have 30 more people
in
the building? You know, that have not hit that like button. Click those 3 dots, hit that thumbs up. Most definitely subscribe to the channel if you're new. This is Bernie Sanders speaking on what Trump done did. Oh, Bernie, man, I hope he don't fall this time.
They have it all. Nothing you can do. And in this moment in American history, what we have got to do in Vermont and Oklahoma, in Texas, all over this country, is stand up and fight back and tell them this is our country. And I don't care if you are a progressive, a moderate, or a conservative. This country belongs to all of us, not just a handful of billionaires. And when we look out into the future, the kind of America we want, let's understand a few things. Number one.
All right, Bernie, you doing too much. You done got off topic. Y'all know Bernie getting old, man. Bear with him. All right, let's switch gears. All right, so we got some more reactions about what Trump done did. Hold on. Let's keep on going, man. We gonna skip past Bernie. Bernie got off topic. Let's go.
Essentially unique. This is MSNBC's ongoing special breaking news coverage. I'm Rachel Maddow. If you're just tuning in, we are following the breaking news that U.S. bombers carried out strikes today at 3 Iranian nuclear sites. One at Natanz, a site that had previously been hit by Israel. Israel and Iran have been trading strikes since Israel's surprise attack last Friday. Israel has already attacked the site at Natanz. Now the United States has done so as well. Another nuclear site near Isfahan in Iran, and also, according to the president, the facility called Fordo, which is a deeply buried facility, and that's important tactically because the U.S. military is believed to have essentially unique targeting capacity to hit a site like that. It is a deep underground facility. The United States has essentially developed weapons specifically to target facilities like that one, and so these B-2 bombers that have reportedly carried out these strikes tonight in Iran are aircraft with capacity that no other military in the world really has. Now, common wisdom about this president, about the political movement that he leads, is that he is supposedly isolationist, that he is supposedly anti-war. That has never been exactly right. That's always been kind of a lazy common wisdom. In less than 6 months back in office, he has threatened military action against Panama, against Canada, against Denmark in order to seize Greenland. He has bombed Yemen over and over and over again, and now he appears to have entered the United States military into a war in Iran, something that neoconservatives have thrilled to for, I guess, 2 generations now. A lot of commentary around the Trump phenomenon and Trump's politics would suggest that he has risen in opposition to the neoconservatives who have advocated for this type of war since essentially the Iranian Revolution in 1979. But since 1979, the U.S. military has not engaged directly with Iran. But Donald Trump has done so tonight. Donald Trump has ordered U.S. military bombing raids on Iran. We are now in war with Iran. President Trump announced the strikes on his niche social media platform, which is called Truth Social. He said in that post, quote, "We have completed our very successful attack on the 3 nuclear sites in Iran, including Fordow, Natanz, and Esfahan. All planes are now outside Iran airspace. A full payload of," inexplicable all capital letters, "bombs." It's not an acronym, he's just spelling it in all capital letters. "A full payload of bombs was dropped on the primary site, Fordow. All planes are safely on their way home.
Trump loves social
Congratulations to
media,
our great
guys.
American warriors. There is not another military in the capital world that could have done this." And then he says in all capital letters, "Now is the time for peace!" Exclamation point. "Thank you for your attention to this matter." President, in his quirky spelling and delivery, delivering the most sober possible message to the American people, who have been largely opposed to and afraid of a potential U.S. war with Iran, again, for generations. Donald Trump has now started it. We are expecting President Trump to address the nation just about an hour from now, talking about this decision. Well, of course, we'll bring you that live when it happens. Joining us now from Washington, D.C. is NBC News White House correspondent Monica Alba. Monica, thanks very much for being with us. I know this is crunch time. What can you tell us about this decision tonight and what we know about the potential scope of this military engagement?
Yeah, Rachel, good to be with you. Look, this is an incredibly consequential decision of a massive scale for any president, but of course, in particular for this one who had been touting the fact that he was going to maybe give Iran as much as 2 weeks to see if a diplomatic solution could be possible. We knew that there were European leaders huddling with Iranian officials in Geneva as recently as yesterday. And he was even arguing from the tarmac when he was traveling yesterday and on Air Force One that perhaps that was a possibility, but he had been also very clear that it was likely that if he didn't get the terms of a deal that he was potentially pursuing here, that the U.S. military could get more involved. Now, he's going to lay out, I'm told, his rationale to the American people for this when he does speak at 10 p.m. And he is going to, of course, talk about what this means in this moment. I'm told by a senior White House official that as of right now, he and the country does not and should not expect additional strikes. Again, at this moment, this has obviously been unfolding in real time, can change incredibly quickly, but that is the posture as of, again, this second. And we know that the president also just a couple of hours ago had a conversation with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu of Israel. We know that this was a U.S. military operation that was heavily coordinated with Israel. They obviously were briefed on every step of the way. They knew this was happening. It was done, again, in a highly coordinated fashion, and that's not surprising. The president has been in touch with the prime minister pretty much every day over this last week or so when it comes to this conflict. And I can also tell you, Rachel, that he was traveling back from his property in Bedminster, New Jersey. He returned to Washington around 5:30 p.m. this evening, and he went to the Situation Room where he monitored much of this in real time, again, with some of his top national security advisors, and where we know that this is something that will be planned. It's going to continue to take place throughout the evening. We know that tomorrow he has another National Security Council meeting, and to the point that you started this show with about this question of the U.S. effectively being at war with Iran right now, this is a president that's going to need to come out and tell the American people why he made that decision, why this posture was one he felt was inevitable. And you're already seeing a lot of lawmakers and a bipartisan effort, we should point out, raising questions about this and using this kind of military authority without that congressional approval. We know there had been a resolution that had been in the works over the last couple of days to see if that could be put up for a vote next week that was anticipating this potentially. But again, this is President Trump's maybe perhaps most consequential decision of this second term. Of course, there were many in the first term, but this is also a person who we need to remind everybody as a candidate repeatedly campaigned on and against ending all foreign wars and not pushing the U.S. further into these kinds of military entanglements overseas. So I think there's a lot of questions tonight about his approach to all of this. But I can also tell you, Rachel, just from talking to my White House sources a short time ago, they're very pleased with the fact that this was able to be carried out covertly, that it didn't appear that anything leaked, and that they were able to do this and keep U.S. military and U.S. personnel who were involved as safe as possible throughout the evening for now. Rachel.
Monica, this is both a communications, White House communications question and also sort of a strategic question, which is that I know that I'm sure that the White House has seen the American public polling on this and knows that this is an unpopular move. The president has been so opaque,
2 days ago,
almost teasing in his remarks to reporters about how nobody knows what I'm going to do. The White House hasn't made an effort to try to publicly sell to the American people the necessity of a strike like this. They've done the strike now.
What's up, cut up girl?
And we don't know, again, if this will just be a one-off or this is the start of a longer engagement. Once you've bombed another country, you don't necessarily get a say as to how much war you end up with them in. Is there a sense at the White House that there is going to be, they now plan to try to do more communication to the American people as to why this is necessary, why this is our war? Secretary of State, for example, Marco Rubio, has argued essentially the opposite to the American people in very recent days.
Yeah, just as recently as about a week ago when this conflict really began in earnest and all of the fire was being exchanged between Iran and Israel, that was the top line from many White House officials and senior aides saying that this was something where the U.S. was assisting Israel in its defense as missiles and drones were coming in from Iran, but that it wouldn't go beyond that and that this was Israel's conflict to manage. So you're right to note that there was a shift in that pretty dramatically, and the president began to say that he was very concerned about Iran's ability to build and have a nuclear weapon, even contradicting several times his own director of national intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard. In fact, just yesterday, flat out, he said she's wrong, referring to her testimony in March about her doubts that Iran was as close as the president believes Iran was to having a nuclear weapon. And days before, he had said, I just don't think that she's right about that. And he dismissed her entirely. And then again yesterday, he said, I don't even care what my entire intelligence community says. I believe that they were just very close to having that ability. So we are also seeing that split in the last couple of days that the president himself has talked about uniquely, but that the intel community is at odds with, which is really, really significant here. I think that Vice President J.D. Vance and a couple of other people who have been key to the president in this decision-making did start to lay the groundwork a couple of days ago for this rationale of potentially dropping bombs in Iran, saying that this is a president who will respond with great force if he feels there's any risk to American assets or personnel. And we know that that was a little bit of a factor in this, that the president completely was arguing in a lot of his meetings with national security advisors that he was worried that there could be exposure to or retaliation to U.S. military personnel or U.S. interests abroad and also at home. And that was something that drove a little bit of this decision as well. But I think that you're going to now see also this major split in MAGA world play out in real time with a lot of people in his base who were arguing quite publicly against this kind of military intervention from the U.S. and then some who were trying to back him up and say that this is a president who should be trusted for making these decisions and trying to argue that he, if he did it, would be in the right authority to do so. But I think he keeps saying that his supporters will love him no matter what. But I think this is a real question for the base and those millions of supporters who do have differing views on this, Rachel.
NBC News White House correspondent Monica Alba joining us from Washington. Monica.
You know what I'm saying? So that's what they had to say about what Trump was doing. Now let's take a look at what Trump said 2 days ago compared to what he did today. He's talking about 2 weeks. He said, man, you know that he felt like that Iran was real close to having a nuclear weapon. But some of his top people who investigate that type of stuff said absolutely not. Then he told us, you know, he would think on it, and it would take about 2 weeks for him to make his decision. But he did it in 2 days. Check this out.
Over that is. Welcome Welcome to Meet the Press Now. I'm Kristen Welker in Washington, where the White House has just issued a new timeline for President Trump's decision on possible U.S. military strikes on Iran.
So why did he do it in 2 days rather than 2 weeks like he said?
Nuclear program as Israel and Iran plunge deeper into armed conflict. After teasing the possibility of imminent action yesterday, the president delivered a statement to reporters today through his White House press secretary, Caroline Leavitt. Take a listen.
Based on the fact that there's a substantial chance of negotiations that may or may not take place with Iran in the near future.
Let's go, OG Poke Dog. That was most definitely the overplay for the underplay. He had them thinking they had plenty of time, and then he jumped on them.
Make my decision whether or not to go within the next 2 weeks. That's a quote directly from the president for all of you today.
Leavitt also said correspondence between the U.S. and Iran has continued even as she insists that the government believes Iran has never been closer to obtaining a nuclear weapon. But sources familiar with the matter tell NBC News that the U.S. intelligence assessment on Iran's nuclear program has not changed since Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard testified back in March that Tehran had not made a decision to rush towards building a bomb. The president has publicly clashed with Gabbard over that assessment, and senior administration officials now tell NBC News Gabbard appears to have fallen out of favor with the president. Meanwhile, the fighting on the ground continues to escalate, with Israel targeting an Iranian nuclear reactor overnight and Iran striking near a hospital complex in southern Israel early this morning. NBC News has confirmed that hospital is within a mile of an Israeli military intelligence compound that was operational as recently as last month. Prime Minister Netanyahu spoke to reporters while surveying the hospital damage, calling the government in Iran a criminal regime while praising the action the U.S. has already taken to defend Israel.
President Trump will do what's best for America. I trust his judgment.
We need 6 more likes, guys, to hit 800.
A tremendous friend of Israel and the Jewish people. And we will do what we have to do, and we are doing it. We are committed to destroying the nuclear threat, the threat of a nuclear annihilation against Israel.
NBC News international correspondent Matt Bradley is in Tel Aviv and filed this report.
It looked as though we had a days-long reprieve from the Iranians here in Tel Aviv, but this morning shattered all of that. There was another direct impact on a hospital, this time in the southern part of the country, in the city of Beersheba. This injured about 24 people, perhaps more, but none of them were particularly serious. There were no additional deaths. There haven't been any deaths from Iranian bombardment in the past nearly 72 hours. So in many ways, this country has turned the corner. But the fact is that we're seeing impacts still from Iranian ballistic missiles. We heard from the IDF this morning. An official there said that they had put out about 2/3 of Iran's ballistic missile launchers. But he said there are still a lot of missiles that Iran has yet to fire. So that is a very troubling situation as we reach 1 week into this tit-for-tat offensive. The Iranian attacks reprisals for the unprecedented attacks that Israel fired at Iran starting last Friday morning. The Israelis have said that their objective is to totally disable Iran's nuclear program. And to that effect, they hit another, this time a reactor today that had been decommissioned before. The Israelis said that this reactor, they understand, is going to be used to try to refine plutonium, which so far hasn't been a major ingredient in Iran's nuclear program. Still, clearly, the Israelis trying to destroy this nuclear program, but the focus seems to be shifting a little bit towards that other goal that has remained somewhat mysterious, very prominent in the background, the idea of regime change. After that hospital was struck, we heard from Israel Katz, the defense minister, saying that the Ayatollah who leads Iran should no longer be allowed to exist.
Wow.
Our thanks to Matt Bradley for that report. Joining me now is NBC News White House correspondent Vaughn Hilliard and NBC News senior national security correspondent Courtney Cubie is with me on set. Vaughn, let me start with you at the White House. Talk about the key takeaways after we learned from White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt that the president is now giving himself this 2-week timeline in order to make a potential decision about Iran.
Right. There's two fronts to this. Number one, Kristen, it was on Monday night that the president returned to the United States leaving the G7 summit early and in a social media post directing individuals into Iran to, quote, evacuate. The stakes of what would amount to staggering consequences of potential American airstrikes on Iran are vast. And the president here in just the last 24 hours has suggested that he could hit Iran at any minute and that he will make the decision at due time, and that nobody knows what he's going to do except for him when he ultimately decides to do it, if in fact he decides to use U.S. forces to strike. Now, this timeline of within 2 weeks that the press secretary at the White House just this afternoon provided, I think one deserves some context. We have seen from the president over the last decade of his time in politics and office and as a candidate promised 2-week timelines on domestic agenda items, but also it was just 3 weeks ago that he promised that there would be consequences if, in the scenario that Russia did not agree to a certain extent ceasefire or peace deal negotiations. Last Wednesday, that deadline, that 2-week deadline, it came and it went with no apparent consequences for Russia here. So while at the same time we are waiting for the president to potentially make very imminent decisions on this front, at the same time, the White House press secretary clearly seemingly opening up the door to potentially Iran coming back to the negotiating table to avoid the U.S. becoming more involved in this conflict than they already are.
She certainly did. It was so notable today, Vaughn, that we saw Steve Bannon, of course, who served in the first Trump administration. He has remained one of President Trump's closest outside advisors, entering the White House. It's our understanding he was there having lunch with President Trump. It was a previously scheduled visit that had to be rescheduled, so it just so happened to fall on today, but significant because he's been one of the most outspoken people urging the president not to join in the Israeli offensive against Iran, arguing that it will ensnare the United States in a foreign conflict and that it goes against the America First foreign policy vision, right?
Right. Steve Bannon and Tucker Carlson have both been at the forefront in vocalizing this anti-interventionist position. Obviously referencing the president's own opposition to the Iraq War 20 years ago, and noting that if you go back to the Republican National Convention last year, Tucker Carlson was given a primetime speaking slot. Steve Bannon helped drive and mobilize a turnout that helped the president win this election here. And largely, the argument is that there was a great many people that turned to the president because of a commitment to not engage the U.S. in further Middle East conflicts. And so when you look at, the voices that were largely the outspoken ones over the past month, Steve Witkoff was one of those. He was seen at the White House today as well, but he has largely gone silent as several of his negotiations from Russia, Ukraine, Israel, Gaza, but also now on the Iran nuclear negotiations have seemingly stalled. And you see here the voices of people like Steve Bannon and Tucker Carlson trying to, before the president interferes or further accelerates potential conflict with Iran, who is already committed to trying to attempt to strike U.S. military installations in the scenario the U.S. becomes more involved. We are seeing some of these close Trump allies begin to try to interfere or push him in a different direction than others within the White House may be urging him to do.
All right, Vaughn, thank you so much for that great reporting. Courtney, let me turn to you. You heard Vaughn mention the Iraq War. When you think about the Iraq War, you have to think about the intelligence because that was so much in focus and then was ultimately...
Did Trump jump the gun, guys? Did he jump the gun? Because it wasn't confirmed that they had any kind of nukes at all. But Trump went ahead and bombed them folks.
Disputed that the intelligence was just wrong. So the question I think becomes now when we think about whether President Trump is going to greenlight a U.S. military action in Iran, what is the latest intelligence around how close Iran may or may not be to developing a nuclear weapon?
Yeah, and as far as we know, there has been no change in the intelligence, the U.S. intelligence about that. And that's why this has been so confusing this week, is exactly whether there has been some new intelligence that's classified that the American people and frankly, senior members of Congress and senior members of the intelligence community have not shared, and including with someone like Senator Mark Warner. We heard from him And when he was asked specifically about whether Iran has advanced their nuclear program, and that may be some justification for this action, here's what he had to say. Again, he's the ranking member on the Intelligence Committee. So far, at least, the intelligence community has stood by its conclusion that Iran is not moving towards a nuclear weapon. They were enriching additional uranium, but they were not
Oh, wow. Oh, wow. Iran is not moving towards a nuclear weapon. His top intel. Come on, man. What we doing?
Recognizing that yet, and that decision was left with the Supreme Leader. If there's been any change in the intelligence, I need to know, and I want to make sure that if it is changed, it's based on fact and not political influence. So that gets back to the, sort of the echoes of the invasion of Iraq in 2003 and the notion that what was the intelligence actually cooked. And as far as how much of an impact this has even had on the program in Iran, the Israelis have taken out quite a bit, but they have definitely not decimated the program, even when they're taking out scientists and leaders. What's fascinating, though, and is not getting a ton of attention, is they have really taken out a lot of their conventional capability, their conventional military capability, and that may be one reason that the U.S., and particularly President Trump, is considering this action now.
And let me follow up with you on that, because is the thinking that the United States, with its B-52 bomber, is uniquely suited to finish the job?
Yes, or at least have some sort of a very pivotal point in it, right? To take some sort of a strike that maybe is a turning point in this conflict. So the bombers, as you said, they are the only ones that we're aware of in the world that can carry these very heavy bombs. And we've been talking about these 30,000-pound bombs. It's not just the weight. They actually only carry about 5,000 or 6,000 pounds of explosives. They are surrounded, though, by this very heavy, very strong alloy that allows them to penetrate deep into the earth between 200 and 300 feet. It's the only bomb like it on Earth. The U.S. is the only one who has it, and the only one, as far as we know, who can actually employ it.
Well, your extensive and incredible knowledge of how these things work really shines a light, I think, on what this debate is about. Courtney Hubie, thank you so much for being here in person. We really appreciate it. I now want to bring in retired Lieutenant General Steph Twitty, former Deputy Commander of U.S. European Command and an NBC News military analyst. Thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate it.
Good to be with you again.
So let's just pick up on where I left off with Courtney, the debate over why the U.S. might get involved. Secretary Hegseth was on Capitol Hill yesterday. He said that the Pentagon has presented the president with multiple military options. What do you anticipate those options might look like?
Yeah, so first of all, let me just say that we should exhaust all diplomatic efforts before we introduce military instrument of power into this conflict. If we do so, what I anticipate is we'll focus only on Fordo, going after the deeply buried nuclear products that are about 300 feet underground. I cannot see us getting involved in any regime change or anything other than that. Let's go. So I think it would be a quick strike using our B-2 bombers. Everyone's been talking about exactly this 30,000 pound bomb. That's the bomb that will be used to be able to penetrate and, if not, hit and destroy.
They told them exactly what they was gonna do before they did it. That's crazy. You know what I'm saying? This was 2 days ago when Trump talking about 2 weeks and he did it in 2 days. Wow.
The nuclear weapons or nuclear weapons capability, it would at least close entry and exit points to prevent ever using the product. So that's the way I see things here.
Let me follow up with you there. In reading and watching military analysts, one of the questions that looms over all of this is if the United States wanted to destroy Iran's entire nuclear program, would special forces be needed? Would U.S. boots need to be on the ground at some point?
They most definitely wasn't on the ground. They was in the air. What's up, dog?
To that, what might the debate be surrounding actually finishing the job and taking out Iran's entire nuclear program?
Yeah, I don't think military boots on the ground is required in this case. We have pretty good intelligence about
we did it from the sky. We didn't have to put no boots
nuclear
on the
facility. as you know, is deeply buried in the mountains, pretty fortified. It's a former IGRC base. Back in the day, we collected a lot of intelligence on it, and that intelligence has continued. We worked with the Israelis to focus on that intelligence over the years, as well as our own intelligence. So we have pretty good intelligence on it. And so I think that it will be an airstrike. There may be cruise missiles in support of that airstrike, but that airstrike would be the B-2. That B-2 would have to also have protection, so you would see some fighter jets in that, probably some refueling capabilities and some AWACS capabilities to support communications. But for the most part, quick strike, do a battlefield assessment to ensure that we have everything in terms of the destruction, or as I said earlier, close the entryway, close the exit ways. But I'm looking at quick strike, maybe restrike, maybe another restrike, but it would be an air effort, maybe some Navy efforts from the Mediterranean, and get out.
Lieutenant General Twitty, very quickly with the last 30 seconds we have left here, what do you make of the announcement that President Trump is giving us a 2-week deadline?
I like the announcement, and the reason I like the announcement, we don't want the military instrument of power to lead here. Let's get the diplomatic effort going. Let's see whether Iran will come to their senses and come to the table. And then, if not, then obviously the president has options. But let's get the diplomatic effort in front of the military effort.
All right, Lieutenant General Steph Twitty, we always appreciate your perspective. Thank you so much for being here today.
All right, so that was some of what Trump gave yesterday, guys. Now, they said at 10 a.m. tomorrow, basically the Pentagon is going to give an official statement, a press conference about what all took place today. So we most definitely gonna be in the building for that, guys. I most definitely ran down for y'all everything that I seen and that I knew about this situation that took place today with Trump jumping out the bushes on Iran and basically dropping missiles, you know, on their facilities, their top 3 facilities over there, you know, with their nuclear weapons, you know, and basically he says that he took them out. We don't know, you know, for sure. All we got is what they tell us, so we got to go by what they tell us. Whether it was a good thing or a bad thing, man, I don't know. But all I do know is that Iran has vowed to retaliate. How would they retaliate? We have no clue. When will they retaliate? We have no clue. I just say, man, oh man, I don't even like being in suspense, even thinking about what it is that they may do in retaliation, guys. But as long as they keep me updated, I'll keep y'all updated. We will be in the building in the morning for the Pentagon's official press conference. So make sure you pull up on me. Yeah, man, that's pretty much it, man. That's pretty much all they done gave us. I hope y'all was entertained by the show, man. I most definitely appreciate each and every one of y'all that pulled up. Shout out to anybody that sent a gift, anybody that hit that like button, anybody that subscribed to the channel. Shout out to all my members. Shout out to the Sidewalk Gang. Shout out to my moderators. I got some of the best in the game. I done been in here for about 4 hours already. It's time to get up out of here and make my grand exit. You know what I'm saying? Everybody stay safe out there. Be very vigilant. Ain't no telling what's gonna happen, man. I'll see y'all in the morning, man, about 10 a.m. You know, I will be broadcasting what's going on at the Pentagon. So till I see y'all again, y'all stay safe. And with that being said, it's time for me to make my grand exit. Y'all already know how this go. Sidewalk Gang, checking out. I'll catch y'all on the next one. Y'all be good. I'm gone.